It is time to react to the rankings that came out last night. College football playoff rankings. They're out. What do you think? Where is your team? Are you satisfied? Are you upset? What do you think about the SEC's issue that I'll talk about in just a few minutes from now? But boy, I have my thoughts on last night's rankings, and I hope you do as well because, look, there's still a lot of football to play. Still a few weeks left in the season. We all realize that. However, there were some surprises, in my opinion. Welcome into Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. I am so glad to be with you on this hump day edition of the program. Diesel is still on his staycation. He'll be back on Monday. So many ways for you to get in touch with the show today. I'll tell you how in just a few moments. But the college football rankings came out last night. Yesterday, in this very segment, we predicted what we thought would be happening last night at 7 o'clock. We thought, I thought wrong in a couple of areas. Georgia, Ole Miss, where those two fell was a big point of conversation yesterday. And now we have the results. Again, these are not the final rankings, right? These are not the final rankings. However, boy, how does this set the rest of the season up when it comes to where these teams will finish? In case you missed it last night, Oregon, no surprise there. We all felt like Oregon would be the number one team. They're 10-0. They came in at 1. Ohio State last night came in at 2, at 8-1. No surprise there. The 3 and the 4 last week did lose. So now we see Texas at 3. Penn freaking State at 4. Are you kidding me? Penn State at 4. Indiana at 5. BYU at 6. Tennessee at 7. Notre Dame at 8. Miami, also a talking point of conversation yesterday. The Hurricanes at 9. Alabama at 10. Ole Miss at 11. Georgia at 12. And then I'll give you a 13 through 15. Boise State, SMU, and A&M. That rounds out the top 15. A lot of reaction to get to. Want to hear from you. You can get in touch with the show, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Again, that's 71307. Phone lines are also open as well, 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. What do you think about the rankings last night? Who do you think is in the right spot? Who do you think is in the wrong spot? Let's start on the YouTube stream where our Tolos are already coming in strong. So good to see 40 of you Tolos already on the stream today. JD starts us off. He says, yeah, I'm pissed. Beamer explicitly said, do not rank us, and they went against his wishes. Well, did you think, JD, did you think they would listen to the old head ball coach of the Gamecocks?
The people that do the rankings don't think we're worth a crap, and that's fine. Keep crapping on us. That's the way we like it as well. Don't rank us this week. We're good where we are. We just like to just lay low and work really, really hard and come out and have fun on Saturdays as well.
Don't rank us this week, says Shane Beamer. Look, we didn't get to that audio yesterday. I was going to. I ran out of time. I'll get to that audio in a few minutes because I do have some thoughts on that. Don't rank us this week. We're not worth it. Oh, okay, Shane. Whatever you say. But, JD, you're right. Beamer didn't want to be ranked, right? I say that tongue-in-cheek, yet the Gamecocks are ranked. I'll get to that in a second. DB says lines are locked. That's right. What's he talking about? He's talking about the Upset Picks Challenge that begins in 1 hour from now. Lines are locked at 3 o'clock. And yes, DB, I'll be sending you the word duck during this next commercial break. Do not let me forget. Appreciate you doing that, DB. You are the man. Wesley Roberts on the Facebook stream says, I think an issue with debating who should be ranked where starts with the question, is the best 12 teams or the 12 most deserving? Wesley's asking, is this the best 12 or the 12 most deserving? We all know Georgia is better than Penn State, for example. So I'm glad you brought that up, Wesley, about Penn State. Because if you listen to the show, and by the way, it's good to see you, Wesley, JD, Steven, all in the stream already, DB as well. If you listen to the show, you know that I'm not the biggest Penn State fan. I'm just very unimpressed with Penn State in totality. I'm unimpressed with their schedule. I'm unimpressed with their head coach and James Franklin. So, yeah, I do have issue with them being 4. So that's a very good example, Wesley, to answer your question. Is this the 12 best teams or is it 12 most deserving? You tell me, Tolos, if you agree or disagree with me, but there's no way what we're looking at right now is the best 12 teams, right? There's no way that's the 12 best. They're not telling us these are the 12 best teams. So to answer your question, Wesley, I think, my opinion, Cole's opinion, they're saying, hey, these are the 12 most deserving teams. Because you cannot convince me that Alabama is an inferior team to Penn State and vice versa. Georgia, who I know hasn't looked good, is an inferior team to Penn State. You can't convince me of that. You really can't. So that's a great question. That's a great point. I want to hear from you as well. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Let me grab this call real quick. Hey, let me get this call. Hey, let me get this call.
What's your name?
Let me get this call. Hey, let me get this call. Hey, let me get this call. Hey, let me get All right, Dewey has called in 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. I am solo, so I appreciate you, Tolos, bearing with me as we do get to you, each and every one of you, 71307. That's the way you can text in the show. But Dewey wants to chime in on the phone lines on the Renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone. Dewey, we're coming right to you. Texter says on the text line, it's crazy that Tennessee had a good win against Mississippi. Let me click on the rest of the text here. Oh, let me start that over. I apologize. It split your text up into 3 different texts. Texter says, this comes from the 552. It's crazy that Tennessee had a good win against the Mississippi State with the backup quarterback and did not move up, yet Indiana leaped over them. Well, Texter, to your point, that's what we talked about yesterday. I brought up Indiana. I brought up what would happen to Indiana this week, and I think we were kind of right on that yesterday. Because the 3 and the 4 lost last week, you saw Indiana and BYU move up. Indiana was 8, they moved to 5. BYU was 9, they moved to 6. Penn State was 6, they moved to 4. So that just shows you what happens when the 3 and the 4 loses, like Georgia did, like Miami did. Wesley, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know what your opinion is or how you would answer your own question, but these in my mind are not the 12 best teams. These are the most deserving teams to be in the playoffs. And this, listen, it's the same conversation we've had in years past. We've talked about it in years past with most deserving or best, right? Last year, Florida State, because of the quarterback going down, was viewed as a lesser team, right? And I believe they were a lesser team without Jordan Travis. So is it best or is it most deserving? I think it's from, again, the committee, I'm not in that room, but I think it's most deserving. I really do. I really believe that. You can't, and the reason is, you can't convince me that they believe Penn State's better than Georgia. If Penn State and Georgia played today, would anybody actually pick Penn State to win the game? If BYU and Alabama played today, would anybody actually pick BYU to win the game? I don't think they would. So that goes back to, I don't think they're saying these are the 12 best. I think they're saying these are the 12 most deserving. What say you, 844-FAN phone? We have to hear from our daily Dewey. What's up, Dewey?
Yes, the 12 team, the playoffs is a travesty already. It's a travesty.
How so, Dewey?
Because You want your best teams in the playoffs. You don't want, even though they deserve it, don't mean they're the best. And I would pick Penn State. Georgia's not as good as they think they are. Alabama's not as good as they think they are. And South Carolina proved it. Vanderbilt proved it. And whoever beat Georgia last week proved it.
Dewey, you would pick Penn State over Alabama today?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Alabama's not the Alabama old. They're just Alabama, and they're falling apart.
It's a little too early in the day, Dewey, to start drinking.
I've been drinking all day.
Thanks for the call. Anything else before I let you go? Anything else? I guess
No.
not. Okay, thanks, Dewey. 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. That's the way you can get in touch with me right here on Wire to Wire. It's going to be a good show today. A lot coming your way. We have Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. We're going to get into a little NFL today. Obviously, the Upset Picks Challenge opens at 4 p.m. That's big. I hope you Tolos have your upset pick. I am asking for an all-time high today of all-time high entry submitted, if you will, on the upset picks. So let's break a record. Let's have the most entries submitted on opening day on Wednesday as of yet. Let's do that today. Let's break that record. We'll do a little sports blitz with Rob Brown of the Rob Brown Show coming up at 5 o'clock. He'll hop in the stream. And then, as I mentioned, Kelley Ford. We'll talk about the Panthers, Chris Phillips, and so much more to get to, as well as hearing your thoughts on the rankings last night. I know there's a lot of people who are down on Georgia, rightfully so. They're a 2-loss team, and Saturday night they did not look good. Carson Beck has not looked good at all. But Georgia right now has the toughest, number one, strength of schedule in the country. The toughest strength of schedule in the country. I'm not saying they're the best team in the country by any stretch of the imagination. However, you have to kind of compare apples to apples. And I don't think that's when you look at Penn State at 4 and Indiana at 5. Just my opinion. I don't think that's comparing apples to apples. I really don't. Stephen Webb on the YouTube stream says, so glad the Gamecocks are ranked so that Clemson can get the extra notch in the resume to get in the playoffs. Stephen, are you saying that realistically? Do you really think that's going to happen? Joe on the Facebook stream says, Tolo Jersey Joe says Penn State should be looking in at the top 12. Indiana should be in front of the Nittany Lions. I don't disagree with that, Joe. Now, I wouldn't go as far to say Penn State should be on the outside of the top 12. I just don't think they should be 4. 4 is a little high for me. 4 is a little high. Brandon on the Facebook stream says, I don't think it's close to the final 12, but looks like to me the most 12 deserving to the committee, and no way Georgia favored by 12 to Penn State. Good to see you in the stream, Brandon. Good to see you, Brian Pettit. Wesley says Georgia would be favored against Penn State, and the committee knows that too. That proves they are going with the most deserving, not the best. I agree with you, Wesley. I do think they look at it as an entire collective of what you've done this year. They may, I don't know this, but they may read too much into what your record is. We knew this conversation was going to happen. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of the expanded postseason, but we knew this was coming. We knew this was coming, especially in the SEC. And it's a good problem to have. However, there's a major problem in the SEC right now. There's a major problem when your sport, and I know the top 5 is not full of SEC teams like we've seen it in years past, but the top 15 is. When your sport has all of its best teams in the same conference and you expand this postseason to 12 teams, what do you expect to happen? There is going to be somebody left out, and that's why there's going to be a 5-2 team, or a 5-2, a 2-loss team left out, rather. And that's why I cautioned so many people when they expanded the postseason, yeah, it's going to be great for the sport. However, it's not going to solve any issues. The same issues are still going to arise, just like last year, Florida State not getting in. The controversy last year of the Seminoles being left out. That's still going to happen. Somebody's going to be upset. Whoever's sitting at 13, whoever's that 2-loss SEC team that's on the outside looking in, that conversation's still going to be had. We're not avoiding that conversation. We're not changing the narrative just because we expanded the postseason. It's still going to be that way. And speaking of Carolina and Clemson, as someone brought up in the stream a few moments ago, Clemson finds themselves at number 20 in the college football playoff rankings. Clemson fans, how do you feel about being 20th after your win at Virginia Tech on Saturday? They were 23rd last week. They move up to 20, and right behind them, I mean literally right behind them at 21, the 6-3 South Carolina Gamecocks, who were not ranked last week. The Gamecocks find themselves at 21. So Clemson 20, South Carolina 21. What a time to be alive. Both teams in the state are ranked inside the top 25. No surprise that Clemson's there. Most people would probably think this time of year that Clemson would have been higher than 20. However, obviously that loss to Louisville, it did happen. So continue to let me know what your thoughts were on last night's rankings. Look, for the most part, I don't have a huge issue because it's not the final rankings. With still 3 to 4 weeks to play, I still think there's going to be a lot of movement. However, my worry is teams like Penn State, Indiana, and BYU, who are 4, 5, and 6, because they're so high, even with a loss, would they fall out of the top 12? When I say my worry, what I mean is, are you going to leave a better team out of the playoff because Indiana has a better record, because BYU has a better record, because Penn State has a better record? I know that by the end of the season, you probably won't have 5 2-loss SEC teams, but right now you do. So are you going to sit one of those SEC teams on the outside? Because you have to get Notre Dame in, right? You have to have them in. They're a 1-loss team. Are you going to sit one of those teams on the outside looking in just because of Penn State, their record, Indiana, their record? And look, Indiana, they're 10-0. I'm not going to push back a ton on that. They have not lost a game. And neither is BYU. BYU's 9-0. So I'm not pushing back a ton there. I'm just saying there's going to be a really good team left out. And I'm going to talk to Chris Phillips about this later in the show when we have him on. But the expanded playoffs this year, something that I find very intriguing is the expanded postseason allows us to have a conversation that we have not had before. It allows there to be a narrative that has not lived before. What do I mean? You can now, in the current landscape of college football, you can now have a blemish or two early in the season, get hot at the right time, and go on a run and win the championship, right? In the MLB, in the NBA, in other sports with expanded postseasons, how many times do we talk about, well, that team just got hot at the right time? And guess what happened? They went on and won the championship. They weren't the best team throughout the regular season. It's happened in baseball so many times, especially in the National League East, right? They weren't the best team throughout the course of the year, but they got hot at the right time, and because the postseason was expanded and allowed them in, they made a run. That's never happened in college football. That's never happened. We've never had that opportunity present itself before. So now you see a team like Ole Miss, who a couple of weeks ago didn't really look all that good. There were a lot of doubts about Ole Miss a few weeks ago. But, big but here, because the postseason's expanded, guess what? Ole Miss can now be the team that for the first time in college football creates that narrative. Had a few blemishes, had a few hiccups, weren't the best team all year long, but guess what they did? They got hot at the right time. They beat Georgia on the second weekend in November, and they went on a run. And now, all of a sudden, Ole Miss is a serious contender for the national championship, even with 2 losses. That's a conversation we never had before in college football. All right, speaking of conversation, the very next conversation we're going to have is going around the NFL, the biggest storylines, the most intriguing storylines to me right now. Also want to check in with you Tolos to see how your team's doing. Almost at the midpoint, right? Midpoint-ish of the NFL season. We'll get into the National Football League next.
Pinned on your computer at the fan.
Upstate.com.
One of the things that I love the most about the NFL every single year is just the different storylines you get, whether good or bad. The plethora of talking points, right? Because that's what we do on the radio. We talk local, we talk national, we talk NFL. And so many storylines have already come out of the 2024 NFL season. I don't know, though, if any are bigger than what could have been or what was supposed to be in New York. Is there any storyline out there? And I have a question for you, Tolos, as well in a second. But is there any storyline out there that's more intriguing / disappointing / gratifying, depending on if you like the guy or not, than the Aaron Rodgers dumpster fire in New York? They told us, we were told that they were a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. Well, they were a quarterback away, all right. And they missed on one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Currently, the Jets are 3-7. Somehow, some way, they're favored over Indy this weekend. But the Jets stink. Aaron Rodgers stinks. He's thrown 7 interceptions this season to his 15 touchdowns. He has not been the savior that everybody thought he was going to be in New York. Maybe it doesn't surprise you. It surprises the heck out of me. Look, Aaron Rodgers, I'm not an Aaron Rodgers fan, but I can't say he's not good at football or wasn't good at football, right? And the fact that he has fell off the face of the earth like he has, I think has been a very big surprise for a lot of people. And, you know, for the people, the crowd that don't like Aaron Rodgers, I know that that's been, it's been a good talking point. It's been a welcomed conversation, right? A welcomed narrative. But boy, they were a quarterback away. That's what they said. And now they're like in the same spot, and you could argue that Zach Wilson was better than Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I know that sounds crazy to say, but you can almost argue that. Texter from the 809 says, remember the Jets killed Brett Favre too. As soon as he escaped, he took the Vikings to the playoffs twice in the NFC Championship game once. You're right. However, good players, Texter, are supposed to elevate those around them, right? Aren't the elites of the elite supposed to elevate the rest of the team? Isn't that what LeBron James did? Isn't that what Michael Jordan did? Isn't that what Tom Brady did? And it's just not happening in New York. It's not happening. So they weren't a quarterback away. In fact, you could argue now that they're in a worse spot than they were before. They paid this guy a bunch of money. They're kind of stuck with him until he retires, right? So that storyline in itself, I know a lot of people are probably excited to talk about it because they don't like Aaron Rodgers. There's a big crowd of people that don't, and I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan out there either. But that storyline in itself, that just wasn't supposed to happen. I don't know if anybody saw that coming in the magnitude that it's hit the National Football League. Texter from the 327 says, never trust management that tells fans one player away. Well, I don't think you're wrong there, Texter. I mean, I agree with that. But sometimes you feel like you are, right? Sometimes you feel like, and maybe feel like in reality aren't the same things, but sometimes you do feel like you're one player away. I mean, you know, for example, another storyline that I was going to get to, Washington. I mean, could you not argue that they were kind of in a situation? And again, I know people in Washington were not saying, oh, we're one player away or one quarterback away. And I know they've added more pieces than just Jaden Daniels. However, look at Washington. One of the best storylines in the NFL. They kind of were, right? They kind of were one piece away. And I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl contender today, But this Washington team, we all knew they had a good defense. Even they had bad ownership. Amidst that, they still had a good defense year in and year out, a really good defensive line. A couple Alabama guys up there anchoring it down. But it turned out to just be one player away. Jaden Daniels now just wrecking the NFL. And, obviously a tough game Sunday, but the storyline doesn't die just because of that one game against Pittsburgh. And then look, new ownership, new general manager, new coach, and Dan Quinn has a lot to do with that. There's no doubt. It's not just Jaden Daniels. Dan Quinn's a really good coach. He's a really good coach. So that's another intriguing storyline. Also, Tolos, I want to hear from you. We don't do this often. Tell me who your NFL team is, and let's have the conversation of yes or no, whether they are a contender as of right now for the Super Bowl, or like my team, the Cowboys, it's a big fat no. So if you're a Cowboys fan out there, don't even waste your breath. Don't even waste your text or your minutes, right? Even though you don't have minutes anymore. We all know the answer to that. But who's your team? 71307. Start your text with the word fan, and let's go through and see if your team is still a contender right now when it comes to winning the Super Bowl, making a playoff run. How many Tolos out there pull for teams that are still that still have life, that still have hope? Look, we know if you're a Cowboys fan, you're not. You don't have hope. We know if you're a Carolina Panthers fan right now, you don't have hope. Even though you got your third one of the season, you've won back-to-back, you still don't have hope. All right, let's go to the text line, 71307. Let me hear who your team is, texter. And also let me know if you agree or disagree. Start your text with the word fan. Texter says, I think it's crazy that the Dolphins and Bengals are likely to blow up rosters and start again. Ooh, that's a deep text. There's a lot of meat on the bone on that one. I don't know that are the this sounds crazy to say, but are the Cincinnati Bengals already in that conversation, texter from the 327? Are they already there, ready to blow up and start again? There's no way, right? There's no way they're legitimately in that. I know they're 4-6. 4-6 are the Bengals. And we all expected with Joe Burrow's return, to your point, texter, we did expect more. We did expect them to be much better this season than they've been. Certainly didn't think they'd have a losing record here in the second or third week in November, right? But that's where we are. I don't know that I would go as far to say it's time to blow it up in Cincinnati. You've had a bad year with Joe Burrow. You've had a bad year. I wouldn't blow it up quite yet. If you have this same kind of year next year, maybe you start having those conversations, right? But blow it up. That's a strong phrase, man. That's a strong 3 words. You still have talent. Some of the talent's not happy, I don't think, especially at receiver. There's still a lot of talent there. Michael in Simpsonville chimes in on the text line. He says Bengals are his team. We just talked about them, Michael. Look, right now there's no hope. I don't think that you can turn this thing around. Look, you're 4-6. Time's running out in the NFL. You have to start well, right? Teams, if you look at the percentages and the history of teams in the NFL, teams that bury themselves in the hole, or in a hole rather, don't normally fare well when it's all said and done. Could they go on a miraculous run? Sure. Do I see it happening? No. They have the Chargers this week. Sunday Night Football. So right now they're 4-6. Probably going to be 4-7. Probably going to be 4-7. Unless they somehow, some way, beat Harbaugh and the Chargers. Probably going to be 4-7. Texter from the 702, all caps, says Bills. That's your team, texter, the Bills. Look, there's no doubt that the Bills are a contender. They're 8-2. However, I'll tell you this on the Bills. I'm glad you brought that up. I do have to eat a little bit of crow, texter, when it comes to Buffalo. They have a big one Sunday against the Chiefs. Buffalo's favored by 2. But I do have to eat a little bit of crow in the sense of you lost 2 receivers. You lost you lost guys that I thought were going to hurt you more than they have. And you're still 8-2. That's really, really impressive. That you really haven't taken a step back. You lose Diggs. You really haven't taken a step back like I thought you would. I thought there would be regression when you lose guys like Diggs and Gabe Davis. There has not been. And they're 4-0 at home this year. They're undefeated at home. They host the Chiefs in the biggest game of the year. Probably a playoff game, right? That we'll see. So, Texter, yeah, your team's still in it. You're probably pulling for one of the favorites. One of the favorites. CJ from Greer says Falcons. That's an interesting one, CJ. The Falcons are 6-4. Have a winning record. Probably going to win the South, right? The Falcons have Kirk Cousins, who's thrown for over 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. As long as Kirk Cousins is able to perform when the lights get bright as the season goes on, I think Atlanta could make some noise in the postseason. However, what did I say? As long as Kirk Cousins can continue to perform when the lights get bright. That's kind of a concern for me. I still think he's a good quarterback. I really do. But it is a little bit of a concern. Texter says, Cole, email DB the document. I did ask for DB's email on the stream. I don't know if DB's still in the stream or not. But if you can send me, DB, your email, I'll share the Upset Picks doc with you because the Upset Picks Challenge starts here in about 20 minutes. So I'll have that document ready to take all of the Tolo's Upset Picks downs. Let's see. Texter, West Virginia fan 214 says the Commanders. Look, I hate to say this because my team's in the NFC East, but WVU fan 214, don't you feel good about your team? Oh, my word. I mean, look, I know Dan Quinn's a good coach, but who really saw this coming in year one? Who saw this coming in the first year of Jaden Daniels? People say you got to let a quarterback get a few years under his belt. You got to let a quarterback sit on the bench for a few years before he's going to be any good, right? Well, that's not true in Washington. They're 7-3. Could have been 8-2. A really big game tomorrow night for Washington against Philadelphia. Both teams at 7 wins, a division game, or Philadelphia's favored by 3.5. I'm high on Washington, man. I really am. I'm a Dan Quinn guy. Obviously, he was good for the Cowboys, and they're playing so well right now. And Jaden Daniels in his first year he's kind of proven that narrative to be wrong of you have to have a guy on the bench for a while, right? He's kind of proven that narrative to be wrong. Texter says, the Bengals are blowing it up. 3 losses were to the Ravens in overtime. The Ravens by 1 when you went for 2 in Kansas City on the last drive. Let me click on the text. Need some defensive help for next year, says Michael in Simpsonville. Michael, good text. Appreciate that. Texter says, Panthers fan here. When they drafted Bryce, it was said that it was going to be a 3-year project. If he indeed does continue to improve and this year balls out next season, does the Panthers give him a big payday? I don't think the Panthers are anywhere close to giving Bryce Young a big payday. I'm not saying he doesn't get an extension at some point, but Texter, I'm glad you brought that up because coming up later in the show, let me find the exact time, 5:45, I want to get to that. I have a little bit of a comparison when it comes to Bryce and the Panthers situation and what I think they should do. What they should do. Texter says, Vikings fan, probably a year ahead of schedule for a deep run. Well, could be. But look, if you're a Minnesota fan, don't you have to feel really good about what you've done with a quarterback that wasn't supposed to be your quarterback? Right? J.J. McCarthy goes down at the beginning of the season. Somehow, some way, still winning games. Still winning a lot of football games. So, yeah, you might be right. Might be a little bit ahead of schedule, but then again, how long does it take J.J. McCarthy to acclimate to the NFL, right? We haven't had that happen yet. We haven't seen that yet. I like J.J., though. All right, let's get back into college football on the other side. I started this show talking about the rankings that came out last night. I want to go back to that. And I have a question regarding the South Carolina Gamecocks. South Carolina is ranked 21st. How many teams in the top 12 do you think South Carolina could beat today? We'll get to that next.
From the Frio, now the Infinity Sports Network.
The ball's in your court.
So I had a South Carolina fan yesterday ask me this question, and I wanted to bring it to the table to you Tolos out there, regardless of where your allegiance lies, whether it's South Carolina or Clemson. I want to hear from you. Last night, the college football playoff rankings came out for the second time this season. South Carolina's ranked 21. We all know they have a loss to Ole Miss that wasn't close. A very close loss to LSU, a tough one to swallow, a very tough pill to swallow. Another tough, close loss on the road in Tuscaloosa, right? And because of that, they weren't ranked last week. They jump up this week to 21st. You take away that LSU loss and give it to them as a win, they're probably in the top 15, if not in the top 12. So a Tolo yesterday, a buddy of mine asked me, look, how many teams do you think South Carolina could beat up there near the top 12? Obviously, if you talk about the top 15, there's some teams there like A&M they've already beaten, so the conversation isn't really needed to be had. Now, when you look at the top 12, though, you've got Georgia at 12, Ole Miss at 11, Alabama at 10, Miami at 9, Notre Dame, Tennessee, BYU, Indiana, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State at 2, and Oregon at 1. How many of those teams do you think South Carolina could beat today? Yes, the 3 losses that the Gamecocks have is ultimately going to be their death sentence when it comes to their chances of getting in the postseason, the expanded playoff. But you can't argue right now that South Carolina is not playing as good as anybody in the country. There are a few teams that are playing as good as the Gamecocks right now. Ricky on the Facebook stream says South Carolina could beat 6 out of 10 top teams. So 6 of 10. Oh, you mean, Ricky, 6 of the top 10 is what you mean. South Carolina could beat 6 of the top 10, you think? All right, let's look at the top 10. Let's start at the top. Could South Carolina beat Oregon? I don't think so. I don't think there's many Gamecock fans out there that would push back on that, right? Could South Carolina beat Ohio State? I don't think so. I don't think so. South Carolina's defense is good. Maybe you could say Ohio State hadn't faced a defense like that other than Oregon. But I don't think South Carolina would be able to hang with Oregon or Ohio State. So you throw those 2 out the window. All right, let's get to 3 and 4. Texas, could South Carolina beat Texas? I think they could. I think South Carolina has a defense good enough to where they can make it a ball game with Texas. I said this a couple of weeks ago. South Carolina's defense is good enough to keep them in any game they play. Any game on their schedule, whether it be a bowl game, you name it. Their defense is good enough to give them a shot to win. I think South Carolina could have a shot against Texas. At 3, by the way. I think South Carolina would beat number 4 Penn State. I really do. I told you I'm not high on Penn State. I'm just not. They always choke in the big games. Not really impressed with their schedule. I think if the Gamecocks played the Nittany Lions, I think the Gamecocks would win. I really do. Let's look at what Penn State's done. They're 8-1. They beat West Virginia. Okay. They beat Bowling Green. They beat Kent State. They beat Illinois. They beat UCLA, who stinks. They beat Southern Cal, who's not really good this year. By the way, that game went to overtime. Beat Wisconsin. Lost Ohio State in prime time. As we all know, they do in big games. They lose in big games. Sorry to those Penn State fans out there, if there are any in the Upstate. They beat Washington. They have Purdue Saturday, who absolutely is terrible. Then they have Minnesota and Maryland. Do you push back with me, Tolos, that South Carolina would beat Penn State? I think they'd have a very good shot against Texas. I think they'd beat Penn State. I think they'd have a very good shot against Indiana. I think they'd beat BYU. Tennessee, Tennessee's always a tough one. They beat Tennessee 2 years ago, and it wasn't even close. But you can't say that their defense wouldn't keep them in it. So they'd obviously be able to stay in that ball game. It wouldn't be a blowout, in my opinion. I think the Gamecocks could beat Notre Dame. I think they would beat Notre Dame. I think they'd beat Miami. Miami's offense is elite. There's no doubt. But Cam Ward has not seen a defense like South Carolina's. I think they beat Miami. Alabama, we know what happened. Almost went on the road and beat Bama, who's 10 in the country. Ole Miss was the only game this year that wasn't really close. Georgia 12. I think South Carolina's defense, man, I think they would really fluster. I think they would really, really fluster Carson Beck. I really do. You look outside the top 12, Boise State, SMU, they already beat A&M at 15. They beat Kansas State. I think there's only a few teams in the top 10 that you could say without a shadow of a doubt would beat South Carolina. And that goes to say how good they're playing right now. Texter says, this comes from the 432. Gamecocks have a formula. Get ahead to unleash the pass rush. Use the quarterback in the rush attack to extend drives to camo a weak offense. Well, Texter, you're not wrong, but any team that can play with a lead that has an elite pass rush, doesn't matter if it's high school, college, or pro, they're going to excel. And you're right, they do. Texter says, any of the Big Ten teams play BYU. I'll have to get back to that. Texter says, we have never lost to Ohio State. Texter from the 468 says, as long as Clemson cleans up the kicking game, U of SC will be exposed on November the 30th as a pretender. Hashtag rivalry month, baby. Clemson fans pretty confident. Yesterday, the Clemson fans we heard from weren't very confident. So it is good to hear. It is good to hear a little more confidence from the Clemson fan base. I don't know if it's deserved confidence, but it's good to hear that confidence. To put a bow on it, though, I do think South Carolina would beat a lot of the top 10 teams, but it goes back to the conversation that Wesley and I were having in the first segment. These rankings aren't about the best teams. These rankings are about the most deserving, right? Unfortunately. 7 minutes from now, Tolos, get ready. I'm calling for an all-time record-setting day. 7 minutes from right now, the Upset Picks Challenge opens. We need your submission. That's next. is time, the Upset Picks Challenge. It is OPEN. 4 o'clock. Look at your clocks. If it says 5 o'clock, you forgot to change the time last weekend. The Upset Picks Challenge is open. 1, 2, 3, go. I am calling for a record turnout on opening day of the challenge. DB does a fantastic job getting these together each and every week, compiling the rankings, putting together the graphics. Shout out to our man DB. Also, DB, if you are still listening, let me know, no rush, but let me know what the record has been this season for Tolo submissions on opening day. And when you let me know, we're going to break it. Whatever it is, whatever it was, whatever the highest amount of submissions we've gotten on the show, we're going to break that record today on this Hump Day edition. So good to be with you. I'm Cole Bryson. Diesel's on his staycation still. He'll be back on Monday. It is a beautiful day here in the Upstate as I look out the window, still having to get adjusted to this whole daylight savings and getting dark an hour sooner. But it's time to get the upset picks in. I'll tell you what the challenge is in just a second. If you're new to the show, 1, 2, 3. I can't even count them all already. I can't count that high. The screen has already moved up on me because we've had so many submissions in the last 2 minutes. So I'll get to those in a second. But here's how you enter the challenge. If you have not done so yet, we know we have listeners join the show for the very first time each and every day right here on Wire to Wire. And you Tolos, which stands for Turn It On, Leave It On. That's what we ask you to do. That's the crying, the war chant, if you will, the war cry. Tolo, that's what you are. You Tolos, if you want to enter the challenge, you find a game on ESPN.com. And by the way, the spreads are locked in at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. You find a game where you think the underdog will win the game outright. And once you find it, for example, if you like Syracuse to beat Cal this weekend, you send in your name, the game, and the spread to 71307. That is our text line. Again, 71307, keyword fan. That's the way you can get your upset pick in. And I'll be reading them. I'll be looking for them. DB says, Cole, I'm pretty sure it was 3 weeks ago when we broke the record for the first for the record amount of submissions on the first day. I'll be home in a few and tell you, no rush, whenever you can. I'm just curious as to what that number is. So we can kind of set a goal, you know what I mean? Let's set a goal. So Tolo's The Upset Picks Challenge is open right now. Let's go to the phones, 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663, where Delvin gives his over the phone. And Delvin, let's go right to you. What do you have for us this week, brother?
Give me Arizona State plus the 9.5 over Kansas State.
All right, can you say that one more time? I'm going to type it in here because I am typing. I'm doing a lot at one time. One more time.
Give me Arizona State plus 9.5 over Kansas State.
Got it. Arizona State plus 9.5 over Kansas State. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
Delvin, why do you take Arizona State? What's your reasoning behind that?
I'm not gonna look at this team. I know it was a couple games that they didn't play good because Sam Levitt was hurt, but Sam Levitt is back now. And something from the beginning of the season, Kansas State has not looked like the team that everybody thought they were going to be. Everybody thought they were going to be the favorite of the Big 12. They're not even. I don't think they got a chance to win the Big 12. They're down to BYU in Colorado right now, and I think Arizona State can go in there and beat them.
I like that, Delvin. I really do like that. I've got 3 or 4 that I've been kind of bouncing around, but I like that. And now tell me if I'm wrong. You are on the board. I know you went, the first 7 or 8 weeks without getting on the board. You are on the board now, right, Delvin?
Yeah, I had picked Syracuse a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah, put Syracuse, yeah.
Perfect. Delvin, best of luck to you and appreciate the phone call.
Yeah, thanks for the call, man. Best of luck to you, too.
I need it, brother. I need all the luck I can get. If you can cast some more luck my way, go ahead and do so because I have been horrible. I mean horrible when it comes to the Upset Picks Challenge. 844-FAN phone. If you need to get yours in on the phone line, you can. The text line, 71307. And by the way, if you missed a pick yesterday, we did have one texter that let us know that we evidently missed a couple of picks. Texter, I still need your name so we can go back and find those correct picks and give you credit for them. We want you to have the credit for those picks. One other point, real quick, before I get to the text line, a very important note. Please use the same name each and every week when it comes to the Upset Picks Challenge, because if you send in one name one week and a different name the next week, there's going to be a lot of confusion on our end when it comes to DB compiling all of the standings. If you want to see the standings, by the way, you can do so at the Fan Upstate on Twitter. The top 50 is pinned, and if you click that tweet, underneath it, you can see 51 through 117. And bad news for me, I don't see myself. Oh, I'm kidding. I found myself all the way down at 67. I currently have 12 points. I sit at 67 in the Upset Picks Challenge. Twisted Whisker leads the challenge right now. He sits at the top of the leaderboard with 60.5 points. Shout out to you, Twisted Whisker. You've been incredible this year. 60.5 points. That's phenomenal. Noel right behind him at 59 points. And then rounding out the top 10, excuse me, John Dog at 3, Reed Atkins at 4, Joe D at 4 as well. They're Reed and Joe D are tied at 4. Justin L at 6, Amazon Guy at 7, Billy Horn at 8, Jake Crane also tied for 8th, and T-Ray rounding out the top 10. I might have time a little bit later to get to the other parts of the leaderboard. Shout out to Diesel, though, even though he's not here. Diesel, 25.5 points, sits at 25. Right behind Nick Saban, who has 26. Diesel's doing well. See, that's the thing. He's still in striking distance. And if this time of year, if you can find yourself in striking distance, you have a very good shot at it. All right, let's go to the text line, 71307. Get your upset pick in. If you have any questions about it, or if I didn't explain it well, let me know. But starting us off 9 minutes ago, Maize and Brew taking Utah plus 11.5 over Colorado. Tiger Pal Rachel wants Syracuse over Cal at 9.5. WVU Fan 214 wants Arkansas 13.5 over Texas. CJ from Greer wants Utah plus 11.5 over Colorado. Boomer Bill wants Tennessee over Georgia plus 10. JT in Greer says, I'll take Arkansas plus 13.5 over Texas. Let's see. Tolo Keith in Fountain Inn says, Kent State at Miami of Ohio, 30.5 points. Keith in Fountain Inn, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't have much confidence that one's gonna hit. I'm sorry, Keith, but that is that's swinging for the fences. All the credit in the world to you, but I don't know if that'll hit. A lot more to get to on the text line. The text line is going nuts right now. I'll try my best to get to all of the submissions in just a few moments. I want to go back to the phones where JD wants to chime in. JD, are you ready to give your upset pick?
Yeah, let's chime it in, man. I helped lead the upset pick study session yesterday.
Yes. So you have no excuse now, right?
I'm so close. I was so close to picking that Mizzou plus 12 at Carolina, but I really don't.
No.
Yeah, I don't think Mizzou's going to have much for us. I looked at the Pittsburgh plus the 10 and Clemson. I don't know that one's going to happen. So I'm going to go Nebraska plus 9 over USC with a new offensive coordinator this week and Dylan Raiola. I think that Nebraska with home Dana, we'll say Dana. I can't even pronounce his last name. We'll say Dana. Dana and Nebraska and Matt Rule are coming for the Trojans this week. So give me Nebraska plus the 9 against USC.
I don't hate that pick at all, JD. I think that's a good pick. And also, I want to say one more thing, react to something you just said. You said a minute ago you don't think Missouri has anything for you, talking about the Gamecocks. How good is it? Look, and I know you just barely missed the postseason or the expanded playoff, but think about this for a second, Gamecock fans. Here we are on the 13th of November, and at the very beginning of the season, people thought the Missouri game was a scratch. They had just already chalked it up as a loss. JD just said, and I agree with him, by the way, he doesn't think Missouri has much for him. Boy, how good should that make South Carolina Gamecock fans feel?
Well, here, I'll make Gamecock fans feel even better. I actually, going into the season, I predicted 4-8. And I said, I do reserve the right until I see some play on the field and until I see some of these other teams play. I'm going to go 4-8 because at that point we had a really difficult schedule. LSU isn't who we thought they were going to be. Ole Miss, yeah, they smoked us. That might have been a winnable game had we come off the bye week properly. Yep. But I was also chalking up a loss to Oklahoma. I was chalking up the loss to Bama, which we had a chance to win. And so here we are, late in November. We're looking at the chance. I still think we might go 8-4. I think we're going to drop either Missouri or Clemson game, one of the two. Not sure which one just yet. But, let me ride with Nebraska and Matt Rule and the new OC over USC this weekend. Y'all have a good one. Be blessed.
Good luck to you, JD. Appreciate the phone call. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. I do have a number. Before I get back to the text line, I do have a number for you. You Tolos out there. And maybe I made a mistake by doing this, but I boldly said a few minutes ago that we're going to break the record for the amount of submissions on opening day. DB on the YouTube stream got back to me, and he gave me the number. It's a lot bigger than the number is a lot bigger than I thought it was. I did not expect the number to be that high, DB. I'm not doubting the Tolos, but boy, that's a high number for day one. So breaking news, DB says the number is 70. The number is 70. 70 day one picks during week 9, 60 the week before, 55 the week after. So that's unbelievable. DB, we had 70 picks on Wednesday of week 9. Are you kidding me? That is a lot of picks. I didn't realize the number was that high. So Tolos, boy, is the challenge presented to you even more so now. That means we have to have 71 submissions today. 71. That's a lot, but I believe in you. I believe in you. I know right now we have over 20 because the text line texts continue to come in. But what we're going to have to do is, just like the election, when you had to have voters who never voted before participate if you wanted your party to win, Tolos that have never played the game before, played the challenge before, brought to you by Ingles Markets, we're going to have to kind of lean on you today. We're going to have to lean on you to participate in this challenge if you have not done so as of yet. Again, you're picking a game, according to ESPN.com, where you like the underdog to win the game outright. You need to text in your name, the game, and the spread to 71307. Start your text with the word FAN. Also, if you don't know, if you're new to the challenge, we keep a running tally of all of the Tolos, and we post them on our Twitter page. That way you can kind of go at it with other Tolos and see how you do week by week. By the way, if you just tuned in, shout out to Twisted Whisker, who leads the entire challenge right now with 60.5 points. Speaking of the devil, right where I left off 13 minutes ago, Twisted Whisker says, give me Tennessee over Georgia plus 10.5. So Tolo's out there. If you want to kind of look over your neighbor's shoulder a little bit and cheat off of Twisted Whisker. I'm not encouraging cheating here. I'm not advocating for you to be cheaters. But I know everybody at some point going through grade school at some point kind of, stretched and looked over their shoulder to see what the answer was to question number 4. And the leader in the clubhouse, Twisted Whisker, is taking Tennessee over Georgia plus 10.5. So if you kind of want to have a good shot, maybe you stretch it out a little bit and look over the shoulder of Twisted Whisker and pick the same as him. Don't tell him I said that, though. Please don't tell him I said that. Sherb wants Pitt plus 10 over Clemson. Maizen Brew wants Utah plus 11.5 over Colorado. Let's see. Jenna wants Virginia plus 23 over Notre Dame. Hurst wants Pitt over Clemson. Minus 10. Let's see. Joe D will take Navy plus 7 over Tulane. Tater Hater wants Virginia over Notre Dame, 22.5. Greenville Gamecock says Nashville was fun. Vandy's football stadium is a joke. My high school was louder than them, and that's saying a lot because I played at Eastside. Greenville Gamecock, glad you had a good trip up there. By the way, if you haven't already, you may have already done it. I may have read it. Get your upset pick in. Fred S. says, let's go with number 7 Tennessee as a 10.5-point underdog versus what used to be the Dogs. Wow, taking a shot there, Fred S. JB wants Virginia over Notre Dame plus 23. He says he's going big this week. That is big. That is big. Brian Andrews, Navy plus 7 versus Tulane, anchor away. Notre Dame Nate wants Mizzou over South Carolina plus 12.5. Ooh. Texter says Tennessee is not beating Georgia without their quarterback. It's easy money. Let's see. MD75 says Pitt plus 10 over Clemson. That's Clempson. And then the last one I'll get to for now, Brandon Burnett says, let's keep it going with the picks. I'm taking Tennessee over Georgia for 10.5. Ooh. I'll tell you what, is that 2 or 3 now? Taking Tennessee over Georgia. Is everybody just done? Are they kind of giving up on Georgia and Kirby Smart and Carson Beck? And what the heck is wrong with Carson Beck? I'm going to ask Chris Phillips that in the very next segment. Chris Phillips joins us every Wednesday of SEC Unfiltered to talk all things SEC. That's next. Unfiltered's Chris Phillips. Always love talking SEC football with Chris. Chris, how are you, man?
Cole, what's going on, man? It's always a pleasure. Doing well. We're coming down the stretch here. Obviously, college football rankings are being released on a weekly basis. We're getting closer to that time where we'll know the playoff and the bracket and, who's on the path to try to win a national championship. But certainly, man, and enjoying every second of it. The tour has been electric. We're rushing fields left and right. And always a pleasure to join you every week and talk SEC football.
So that's where I wanted to begin with last night's rankings that came out. That's how I opened the show today, talking about the rankings. I'm going to give you one word, and I want to hear your instant reaction, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Georgia.
Deserved.
Ooh, really?
I think they're where they deserve to be right now. I do. I'm seeing a lot of Georgia folks, Cole, to your point, that are upset and they want to cite the strength of schedule. And I totally understand it, right? Number one, strength of schedule. But here's the thing, Cole. It's not just about resume, which they've lost 2 games. I was there in person, witnessed them get thrashed by Ole Miss. I haven't seen a Georgia team dominated like that in quite some time. But it's also eye test, Cole. And to that point, listen, their schedule's really tough. I totally get it and understand it. They've looked bad all year against everyone they've played. Like, not just Bama, not just Ole Miss. How about Florida, who's not very good? How about against Mississippi State, who's not very good? How about looking sluggish against Auburn, who's not very good? I know they had that big win first game of the season against Clemson. Take nothing away from them for that. But it's got to be some eye test, too. Here's the thing, Cole, and I know I'm getting a little bit of a tangent here. If Georgia wins out, they're in. They control their destiny. That's the best thing you could say. But right now, being the first team out, it's deserved, especially after the way they lost to Ole Miss.
No, I'm with you. I just think a lot of people are wrapped around the fact that they have the number one strength of schedule. You're right. They have not played well. That leads me to the next question. What the heck is wrong with Carson Beck?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cole, and watching him in person. Again, I've seen him 2 weeks in a row, and it'll be a third straight week this weekend when I go to Athens to watch the Dogs take on Tennessee. I will say this. Listen, quarterbacks get too much of the credit, too much of the blame. It is more than him, right? Against Ole Miss, he didn't have a chance, especially in that second half. That Ole Miss pass rush, that defensive front, which is one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country, absolutely relentless. But he's seeing ghosts. He's just not playing well. I mean, he just looks lost out there at times. It's as simple as that, Cole. I just don't think he's playing well.
Is there another option, though?
No, I don't think you can bail on Carson Beck. I don't think Gunnar Stockton on the bench is the answer, or Jaden Rashada, God forbid. I think Carson Beck is your guy. Now, again, he's got the potential. Like, I think we've seen it before. I really feel like he can play better than he has been. It's just the turnovers that are killing him. And again, I say this too, it's not just him. The offensive line hasn't been great. They're lacking like big-time playmakers on the outside. They got a few guys here and there at wide receiver, but it's not what we're used to. And then even the running back position, Cole, Trevor Etienne has been banged up here lately. They lost Branson Robinson and Roderick Robertson early in the season, or I think even before the season started. So, they're really thin at running back, too. Oscar Delp and Benjamin Urasek at the tight end position have not been what people thought they would be, trying to replace the production of Brock Bowers. So, say all that to say it's a lot more things than Carson Beck. But at the end of the day, Cole, the number one thing Carson Beck isn't doing well, he's not protecting the football. And in this league, especially when you go on the road like we saw this past weekend, you turn the football over, it's a great recipe to lose.
Well, stay on those rankings for just another minute or two, Chris. Other than Georgia, obviously that was kind of the biggest sticking point for a lot of people. The rankings that came out last night, and we know that they're not final. We still have a few weeks to play. But do you have any other issues SEC-wise, or even teams that are not in the SEC when it comes to what the committee released last night?
Yeah, and I think to your point, Cole, to go back to it really quickly, you make a great point. These are not the final rankings. That's why I don't have an issue with Georgia being the first one out, because to this point right now, that's where I think Georgia deserves to be. Now, again, they went out the rest of the way. They go 10-2. They better be in. I mean, again, number one strength of schedule, to your point. They lose to Tennessee, finish 9-3, Cole, I don't think a 9-3 team's getting in. I'm not sure a 9-3 team deserves to get in. And that's not a shot at a potentially 9-3 Georgia, a 9-3 South Carolina, a 9-3 LSU. I just think there's going to be so many other 10-2 teams out there that I think have earned their way that I just don't think a 9-3. I don't think there's going to be room for a 9-3 team to squeeze in there. In regards to the rest of the rankings, though, I did think it was interesting, Cole. We hear so much about SEC bias and all this. 4 of the top 5 are from the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I mean, like SEC bias to me, Texas being the number 2 seed overall, 3rd in the rankings, just projecting down the way. I think, Cole, I feel more and more like, believe it or not, that the A&M Texas game end of season is going to be a college football playoff eliminator, essentially, because you talk about strength of schedule. Texas is on the complete inverse of Georgia. I mean, their best win is either against Vanderbilt or Colorado State. And respect to Vandy. Vandy's a much better team this year, but still, they just don't have that win to hang their hat on. Outside of that, Ole Miss jumped into the top 12 as I expected they would. Don't have much issue with anything else or much else, outside of that. I would say, A&M moving down a spot. They had the bye week, but they controlled their destiny. And, of course, Cole, I think we got to highlight South Carolina.
Yeah.
Jumps into the top 25 at 21, and they're 1 spot ahead of LSU, which I think is interesting. It's something to talk about because, we're kind of learning, Cole, as we go week by week, what is the committee value? And I think that kind of shows, hey, LSU won the head-to-head, but I think the committee also takes into account that game was 2 months ago. How are the teams playing now? They all agree South Carolina is playing better football than LSU, which I don't think is up for much debate. And so they gave South Carolina the nod in regards to that 1 spot ahead. So I think it's really interesting kind of watching these shows, Cole, listening to the panels, also what they're saying. I feel like they've dropped nuggets each week. For example, I mentioned Texas. Cole, I don't know if you noticed, it's 2 weeks in a row that somebody on the panel has taken a shot at Texas, right? Last night they said, Reese Davis himself said, who is Vandy play, or what's Texas's best win? Vandy? Like, as a shot. That was the 2nd week in a row they've kind of turned their nose up at Texas's schedule, which I get, but it just kind of tells me that it's like, and then they mentioned Georgia's schedule too. So the thought process is out there that if Texas, I think, loses another game, they might be out. I won't doubt that they're out because they won't have that signature win. So, but outside of that, I mean, everything was kind of as expected. But, South Carolina being in that 21 spot, Clemson right ahead of them at 20. The fun part is a lot of this stuff's going to take care of itself in the last few weeks.
We're talking to Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Chris, you kind of teased it right there when it comes to maybe Texas, maybe somebody else. I talked about it yesterday. In your mind, tell me if you agree or disagree, and if you do agree, which team do you think it'll be? There's got to be a 2-loss team in the SEC because right now there's 5 that's going to be on the outside looking in, right?
I mean, if we have 5 or 6 SEC teams finish 10-2, I mean, there's going to be at least one of them left out. I don't, unless Notre Dame, Cole, I think that's the big one. If Notre Dame loses down the stretch, they get beat by an Army or get upset by someone else, I think that knocks Notre Dame out, and I think that paves the way for a 5th SEC team to be in. But, I mean, listen, I think when you talk about all these 10-2 teams, I think Tennessee is probably the one you worry about the most because I think, I think here's the thing. I think if Texas can beat A&M, they're in, right? Georgia beats Tennessee, they're going to be in. If Ole Miss wins out, they beat Georgia, I think they're in. If Alabama, if they win out, right, they beat Georgia, they beat Georgia. That's the big one to hang their hat on. To beat LSU, they're in. What do you do with Tennessee? I know Tennessee beat Alabama. I was at that game. I'm very well aware they beat them. I don't know, Cole. It kind of feels like, and I know Tennessee fans hate to hear that. And listen, they control their destiny. They can go out there and beat Georgia on Saturday night, and this is a totally moot point. But that type of conversation I just had with you, Cole, and the way I painted that picture. Again, you could paint it the other way against Alabama, I suppose. But it kind of feels like Tennessee could be that team on the outside looking in. Hey, if A&M beats Texas is probably going to be, I mean, maybe they will be, but, Cole, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud real quick. Brands matter.
Yeah.
They're not going to leave, Cole, they're not going to leave Texas out. They're just not. I mean, unless Texas loses to Arkansas this weekend, and then loses to A&M. Like, I don't know that a 10-2 Texas won't get in. I really don't, because I think the SEC so badly is going to want to make sure they get in. Greg Sankey is going to be pulling whatever strings he's got to. So it's going to be fascinating down the stretch. But right now, I would say, Cole, the one I'd be most concerned with is probably Tennessee if things play out the way I painted it just a second ago.
In Chris Phillips' mind right now, with all that being said, who is the best team in the SEC?
Texas is the best team in the SEC in my mind right now. I think Texas is. I understand they got throttled by Georgia, but just from what I've seen top to bottom, I still think it's Texas. I do. The Georgia result feels more of, like, I'd love to see those two teams square off again, because I'd probably pick Texas again, to be honest with you. If it's not Texas, I mean, listen, I dropped my power rankings on Mondays. I had Texas 1. And I had Ole Miss too. I mean, if Ole Miss is playing their best, they're just loaded. I mean, we've said that all year long.
National championship contender?
I think so. Yeah. I really do. I think because I think some of the playoffs too, Cole, like the best team's going to win, but it's just like any other sport, right? You got to be playing your best at the right time. If Ole Miss is clicking and playing their best at the right time, Cole, they've got maybe the best defensive front in the country, one of the best defenses in college football. They've got, I think, the best quarterback right now in the conference in Jackson Dart. They got unreal weapons around him. You know, we know the guys, Juice Wells included, Jordan Watkins, Caden Prescorn, and Caden Lee, the list goes on. And they've got the guy in Lane Kiffin that you saw what can happen when he gets in his bag. I thought he called a beautiful game against Georgia, one of the best I've ever seen him call. So, you know, if their offensive line can hold together, which is a big question for a lot of teams out there, I think Ole Miss is as talented as anybody. And also, too, if you look at that bracket, Cole, that was released last night, if you put Ole Miss in that 11 spot, that path is a beautiful path. I would kill for that if I was a fan of the Rebels. Like that, I think it sets up really well. You'd have to go through Penn State, BYU, and then you're in the semis against probably either a Texas or a Georgia, or a Texas or Bama. And I think in that matchup, who knows what could happen in the semis. So, yeah, I think Ole Miss is that caliber of team. But right now, I would go Texas is the best team in the SEC. But you know, again, Cole, it's tough because not all these schedules are built equally. And it's like, what is Texas's signature win? What am I going off of? That's a great pushback on that. But right now, I'd still go Texas.
We're talking to Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. You said something there that I want to go back to, and it kind of got my mind spinning. You said that, whoever's playing their best at the right time. Do you feel like that the way that college football is set up now with the expanded playoff, it allows that saying, that mantra to actually be true? Whereas with a 4-team playoff, if you had a blemish early in the season, it didn't matter if you were playing your best football late in the season or not. You were already cast aside because of that loss you had earlier in the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to connect the dots to what you're saying. So, I mean, feel like it's getting more.
Yeah, basically, it allows more teams to get hot late, regardless of blemishes early in the season. Like, let's say, for example, Ole Miss. If Ole Miss, what are they, 2-loss team right now, right? Ole Miss, 2-loss team, gets hot late in the year, then we all of a sudden, for the first time in my mind in college football, can actually say it is about who's playing their best at the right time, because I just can't remember a time in college football in the past where that mattered, because let's say you had 1 loss early in the season or 2 losses, you were out of the conversation. It didn't matter if you got hot at the end of the year or not. You weren't making the playoffs.
Yeah, I do think, to your point, Cole, it's allowing more teams the opportunity. Yeah, I think you're correct, where you don't have to have yourself fully buttoned up and figured out by week 1.
Right.
You know, you've got some breathing room, you've got some leeway. 1 loss is not going to wreck your season. And by the way, Cole, shout out to, and probably RIP, all those people that said that the 12-team college football playoff was going to ruin the regular season, going to make it matter less. It matters more now, Cole. There's more games we care about because there's more implications across the sport. So, like, again, I was never one of those people. I want to make it very clear, Cole. I always felt like expanding the playoff was going to be great for the sport, and I think we've seen that this year that it is, especially with the parity.
Sure. But
certainly, to your point, yeah, I think it's – Cole, I think when you have that mulligan or so, it gives you the opportunity to – because like you said, Ole Miss would be out of it. Like they wouldn't be able to get hot because you get to the midway point of the season, like, well, our season's over. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe they could get hot, but it'd be for nothing. So, yeah, I think it is giving more teams an opportunity to kind of find themselves. You don't have to have everything all buttoned up. Because I think there's some teams – I mean, look at South Carolina. I mean, I think they're one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in college football. And I think that, I think they're the best 6-3 team in the country, whatever that might mean to you. But, they didn't have it all figured out week one. I mean, Who could forget the Old Dominion game, right? Like, they didn't have it all, but they've gotten better as the season has progressed. And I think it's giving more teams the opportunity to do that and make runs. And, again, listen, football is not like baseball, Cole. Like, at the end of the day, the team with the best players is probably they're still going to win. That's just how football works. Chalk typically it typically plays out where chalk wins out. But I do think, again, to your point, it's given opportunities to teams to kind of find themselves, come together, and potentially make runs into the postseason, which is going to be thrilling to watch for all of us.
Chris, I've got to get your upset pick, but before I do that, you mentioned South Carolina. I want to get your reaction to this audio.
The people that do the rankings don't think we're worth a crap, and that's fine. Keep crapping on us. That's the way we like it as well. Don't rank us this week. We're good where we are. We just like to just lay low and work really, really hard and come out and have fun on Saturdays as well.
Your reaction?
That's Beamer being Beamer, man. I mean, that's trademark Shane Beamer, man. That's
is it petty?
You got to love the passion, the energy, the emotion. That's who he is. So that's been Shane Beamer, Cole, since the day he took the job. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the reasons that he's such a good fit at South Carolina. If you want my honest opinion, I was asked Cole weeks ago, or actually right before the season, do you think Shane Beamer is a good fit at South Carolina? Now, good fit and winning games can be two different things, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a wins and loss business. As far as fit, there's no better fit than Shane Beamer, because I think South Carolina is a program that carries a chip on its shoulder. They play better that way. They play better when they feel like they're doubted and they're hated on, quote unquote. And I think Beamer carries that exact same chip on his shoulder, right? Whether it's warranted or not. And so, I mean, again, I'm not totally surprised. I was told he was a little chippy after the Vandy win. And I mean, listen, again, that when South Carolina's playing with an edge, it goes back to the Cam Smith quote a few years ago when, hopefully I can say this on air, when Cam Smith said, drop your nuts. Like, when South Carolina's playing with that type of attitude, that's when they're at their best. I mean, really, truly. That's why South Carolina fans get so worried, Cole, for like a game like this weekend when it's like, oh my gosh, we're favored, we have expectations, we're ranked. Oh no, this is, I think keeping that edge, I think Shane Beamer is the perfect fit for that program.
Chris Phillips, your upset pick.
I'm going to take a flyer, Cole. It's that time of the year. I'm going to go San Diego State plus 20.5 over UNLV late Saturday night.
Ooh.
Again, a little bit outlandish, a little bit off the wall.
I
but
like
we're
it.
To that point, Cole, we got to start throwing up haymakers. So bombs over Baghdad. So.
Absolutely. Chris, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate you hopping on with me.
Cole, you're the man. I appreciate it. Anytime. Looking forward to it next week.
That's Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. Daily Wires on the other side, getting you updated on what's going on in the sports world. That's next.
local sports. 97.7 FM Greenville, 97.1 FM Spartanburg. Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app.
Upstate.
Leave your namby-pamby sports takes at the door. Call in if you're man enough.
844 fan phone. This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the.
No Diesel today. He's on staycation this week. He'll be back on Monday, so you got me with you all week long as the Upset Picks Challenge is open. We're getting a lot of submissions in. If you have not done so yet, get yours in 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We need your name, your game, and the spread. It's an upset I can't talk all of a sudden. An Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles Markets, where you pick an underdog to win the game outright and text that to 71307. All right. Time to get you updated on what's going on in the sports world. We call them our daily wires. So much to get to. We can't fit it all into one segment. But last night in college football, I don't know how many of you Tolos watched the Maction last night. Buffalo defeated Ball State 51-48. Bowling Green defeated Western Michigan 31-13. And Toledo defeated Central Michigan 37-10. Tonight in college football, Kent State is at Miami of Ohio. Akron is at NIU. And Eastern Michigan is at Ohio. Last night in college hoops, Kansas defeated Michigan State 77-69. Kentucky defeated Duke. God, how about that, Big Blue Nation? 77-72. I was watching that game, and Duke was leading, man. And I was actually looking at the live line to see, who the favorite was. For the majority of the second half, Duke was like minus 600. So obviously, I didn't play anything there. The smart play would have been to take Kentucky plus 600. It would have been a nice payday, but I didn't. Clemson defeated Eastern Kentucky 75-62, a nice comeback win for the Tigers. South Carolina defeated Townsend 80-54. Also, any of you Charlotte Hornets fans out there, I don't know how many Charlotte Hornet fans are out there. But if you are a Hornets fan, I'm sorry. I know it's been a long season. The Hornets lost last night 114-89, and I say it's been a long season. Well, the season just started. Yeah, but you're 4-7. It kind of feels like you're 4-70 already. Not a lot of faith that things are going to be different under Charles Lee. We'll see, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Last night in Klay Thompson's return to the Bay Area, the Warriors, who are playing really good basketball right now, defeated the Dallas Mavericks 120-117. South Carolina cracked the top 25 last night, and the Gamecocks now sit at 21st in the country. How about that, Gamecock fans? And for you Tiger fans, Clemson moved up 3 spots in the college football playoff poll and now sits at 20th. So how about those Tigers moving up a little bit in the rankings? In Norman, Oklahoma, the University of Oklahoma's president and athletic director gave football coach Brent Venables a vote of confidence on Tuesday after the school board's meeting. The Sooners are 5-5 overall, 1-5 in league play. It's not been a great year for Brent Venables. We know the expectations are higher. We know it's tougher now in the SEC, but they still believe in their guy. They still believe in Brent Venables. In Atlanta, after another one of his star freshmen dealt with cramping issues, Duke basketball coach John Shire said the recurring problem was concerning. Blue Devils freshman center Kaman Malik was limited to 10 second-half minutes in Tuesday's 77-72 loss to Kentucky, subbing in and out of the game on multiple occasions due to cramping. So Duke's excuse right now is, hey, our guys are cramping up. It's too hot in this gym. Can you guys please turn the AC on a little bit? That's a good excuse for the Duke Blue Devils, who always seem to have a freaking excuse. The USC football program has been fined $50,000 and placed on a 1-year probation because of a violation of on and off the field coaching activities. The NCAA announced Tuesday After conducting an investigation, the NCAA found that USC exceeded the permissible number of countable coaches by 6 during the 2022 and 2023 seasons. 8 analysts for the football program engaged in on and off the field coaching activities during the spring of 2022, the fall, and the spring of 2023, resulting in the football program exceeding the permissible number of countable coaches by 6 for 2 academic years, the NCAA said in its release. As a result of the violations, the parties also agreed that football head coach Lincoln Riley violated head coach responsibility rules. So things not going well for USC out in California, not just on the field, but also off the field. Those are today's Daily Wires, getting you caught up on what's going on in the world of sports. A lot more to get to. We still have Kelley Ford, by the way, who had to move back 1 hour. He usually joins us at 4:20 on Wednesdays, but today he's joining us at 5:20. So stay tuned for Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. He's fantastic, as he always is. We'll talk to him in about 25, 30 minutes right here on the show. But coming up next, you're going to hear from your morning co-host, your morning host, rather, your morning anchor, Rob Brown. Like we're on a news talk format here. Let's send it out to Rob Brown, host of the Rob Brown Show, joining me in the very next segment. We're going to do a sports blitz. Rob will only be with me for a segment, so I'm going to blitz him at one time with 5 or 6 questions pertaining to what's going on right now in the sports world. So you'll hear from Rob Brown of the Rob Brown Show next. Still time to get your upset picks in. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. I'm calling for a record-setting day, which would take 71 submissions. That would be the most ever on opening day of the Upset Picks Challenge. But I do believe in you, Tolos. I believe that you can get it done, and I am counting on you. We'll get back to that on the text line, 71307. Just make sure you start the text with the word fan. Want to go to the stream where we are joined by Rob Brown of The Rob Brown Show. I no longer have any money. I am broke after I had to pay Rob Brown to come on the show, and I do have a question that's burning, Rob. I just heard a promo that aired on this station. Did you really think corn was spelled with a K?
Okay, there's a whole story behind this, and I do want to point out that first and foremost, the band Corn is spelled with the K. You know the band Corn? That band is spelled with a K, and I thought that's what Lonzo was talking about. He was talking about regular old boring corn or colonels in the army, you know, like colonels marching like yes sir, no sir, colonel. So it was a communication confusion. What we have here is a failure to communicate like Major Payne. We got it straightened out, and we got a fantastic promo out of it, Cole Bryson.
Rob, can you give me a little more juice on your end? I've got my slider turned up all the way, and I can barely hear you, which is not normal for you, by the way.
No, I was going to say, how's that? That should be a
more.
Little bit better.
Give me a little more. Give me as much as you got, if you don't mind.
Now I'm giving you everything I got for Cole Bryson. If that ain't it, we're in trouble, buddy.
I've got you wide open on my end. Wait a minute. Rob Brown just disappeared. He just disappeared from the stream. Let's see if he's got a better plan of action. You back? You got some more juice?
Hold on. I figured it out. Wait
just a second.
Wait a minute. There we go.
Wait just a second.
All right, we're going to wait just a second. It's his first day. He's never done this before. We're going to kill a little time for Rob as he is brand new to radio. DB, appreciate you letting me know on the stream that Rob was so quiet, which, again, I don't know if I've ever said those words before in my life. But he's, look.
Now, Cole Bryson, am I a little bit better off now?
Not really. Not really.
I'm going to reset and log back in. We're
okay.
Figure this damn thing out.
All right. If not, we'll get you on the phone. Either way, I have some burning questions for Rob.
All right. What about now? We got to be doing good. We got to be cooking now.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Okay.
Is that better, Tolos?
Yeah. You tell me if we're better off. We should be way better off now.
I got you loud and clear. It's a little it's a little hot, but it's good. It's good. Not in terms of volume, but in terms of it sounds a little crunchy. But hey, that's okay. I've got you loud.
We're gonna figure. Call this. Listen, this is premier radio. This is A+. The people are logging on for excellence here. We're gonna give them excellence, buddy.
Well, I know it's your first time doing a stream. You don't do any kind of gambling podcast or anything like that. You had to go buy the equipment, I'm sure, in order to join me today. So appreciate it. So we've got the corn thing figured out. My next question for you, as we're doing a little sports blitz, I've only got Rob for a segment, and then Kelley Ford joining us in the next segment. So Rob Brown of The Rob Brown Show. My next question in this blitz I'm throwing at you, Rob. What the heck is wrong with Carson Beck?
He's not that good.
I
mean, that's it. He's just not that good. Listen, I got into a fight with Ryan Horvath from the BetMGM Tonight show back. I was doing a show with him on the BetQL network before the season started, and we were doing a hit or miss on college football quarterbacks. And one of the ones that we put some analysis down on was Carson Beck, and he was going through some different scouting profiles. And I had 2 or 3 of them before the season started that said this guy's probably not getting drafted number 1 overall, but he's a top 5 draft pick. And I said, there's no way. Carson Beck is a dude that's fine. Is he good enough not to lose you a big game? And the answer is yes. And I don't even know if that's true anymore. He's fine. He's okay. But that's the best you're going to get out of the guy. I never understood. And this is why I was not super high on Georgia being a runaway natty winner like a lot of people thought they were, Cole Bryson, because he's not a dude I'm putting the game on the line on his shoulders. He's okay.
Yeah. So you think it's a miss though by like the recruiting side of it from Georgia? Do you chalk it up as a miss because Georgia can't afford to have okay quarterbacks, right?
All right. So Georgia teams gone by, right? Like the two back-to-back teams that won the two natties for Georgia going back-to-back, they were good enough to have an okay quarterback. And I think there are teams that come through that are. Last year's Michigan team, if we're keeping it a buck, last year's Michigan team won a national championship with an okay quarterback. I don't think J.J. McCarthy was all that great. And I think when he steps into the starting role in Minnesota, that's going to bear fruit as well. I think they did it. There are teams that are good enough to win natties, but this team ain't one of them. It's a very good team. And just to be clear, there's a lot of college football teams, Cole Bryson, in my opinion, that win natties because the quarterback is good enough to not lose you the game. And I will take, as a top-tier program, I will take a quarterback who is good enough to not lose me the game. And I think Carson Beck falls into that category. But when you put him down 3 scores on the road in Oxford, Mississippi, he's not good enough to lead you down from 3 scores on the road against a good SEC program. Georgia's got to be great everywhere else, and last Saturday they just were not.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, we've seen, Rob, a lot of Alabama quarterbacks under Nick Saban that weren't elite game managers, if you will. So, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm surprised that Carson Beck's not at the level we expected him to be. And look, he lost a lot of good weapons. Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, pretty good weapons, right? They lost, but just kind of surprising. All right, I've got 4 more questions for you as I'm blitzing you somewhat rapid fire here, unscripted. I didn't give Rob these questions. So I really need you to elevate my mood with your answer here. I don't know why this conversation's been going on in the national media the last 2 days, but it has, and I've been watching it. I've been listening, Rob Brown. Question 3 for you. Could Coach Prime fix my Dallas Cowboys?
No, but it's not because of Prime. Hang on. You got to stick with me here. It ain't because of Prime. Cole Bryson, you and I both know with this whole Jerry Jones fiasco, Jerry is the type of dude that not only is never going to admit that he's wrong, he's never going to fix something that is wrong that would make him admit that he's wrong. The whole conversation, Lonzo, I had this fight this morning. The whole reason the sun was in CeeDee's eyes story is a story isn't because of one passing play. It's because of the fact that it has been a problem that's been going on in Dallas for a couple of years, and Jerry refuses to fix it. And the fix is as simple as just closing a curtain, literally, right? And he refuses to do it. It's not because he refuses to do it. It's not because he loves the sun and he wants the grass to get its plenty of sunshine. Yeah. It's because if he closes the curtain, he has to admit that he made a mistake and he's not going to do it. Well, you and I both know Deion Sanders has got a way that he wants things done. And Jerry Jones has got a way he wants things done. And even if JJ has the utmost respect for Deion's going to come in there and he's going to want control over that team. And you and I both know Jerry Jones ain't about to cede that control over to him. You got 2 alpha personalities, neither one that's going to get out of the other's way. And if you're not willing to give Deion control, Deion ain't going to work for you. So all that being said, I'm sorry to tell you this, Cole Bryson. I have put the Dallas Cowboys in what I refer to as the Al Davis zone. The Al Davis zone is you won't be good again until your owner dies because he's not getting out of the way in any other way, and nobody else is going to change his ways. There ain't but one opponent that can fix your problems with Jerry Jones, and that's time itself, big dog.
No, I said that yesterday. I completely agree with you. And it sounds morbid. It sounds dark, but no, until he dies, nothing's going to change. Yep. Texter says, Cole and Rob, Beck was never a great quarterback. They had too much talent around him to expose his shortcomings, and all of their speeders are gone. I see what you did there. Another texter says, Cole, you need Jerry to cross over the Rainbow Bridge to fix the Cowboys. Yeah, don't see that happening either. All right, Rob Brown, the Rob Brown Show, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. I've asked him about Carson Beck. I've asked him about Coach Prime fixing my Dallas Cowboys, and painfully, I have to agree with you, Rob. I think you're right on it there. My next question for you, let's bring it local to Clemson and South Carolina. You know, I asked David Hood, Rob, a question yesterday, I believe it was, about Clemson getting their fans back on board and believing that this team still can do what Clemson fans want this team to do and be elite. I thought David Hood's answer to me, Rob, was fascinating. He said Clemson doesn't need to be worried about getting that part of the fan base back. Clemson needs to be worried about getting the national media to believe that they're a good team. My question to you, do you feel like the national media is on the fence or convinced that Clemson is a good football team?
The national media, much like any fan base, Cole Bryson, is fickle as hell. And they are going to ride with you, and they're going to die in front of you depending on what you do. I'm going to tell you what Clemson needs to focus on fixing. Them damn selves, buddy. That's it. I mean, that's all they got to worry about. If there's one coach in America that I think could give a crap less about what any narrative it is about them, their fans, their media, whatever, it's Dabo Swinney. And for many years, that was the best thing going for Clemson, and now it's actually one of the worst things going for Clemson, because you would like your head coach to be feeling the pressure from fans to do the portal and do the NIL and all these things we've complained about. And I know he's sick of hearing about those complaints, but those complaints are the complaints because that's the reason you're getting held back. You don't have the talent. You don't have the roster that you used to, because all those kids are going elsewhere and you're not supplementing. Nobody has ever said you got to stop recruiting high school kids and just go in the portal. Yeah. It worked for 1 year for Florida State, and look at them now. What everybody's saying is you got to use them to supplement the roster, and you ain't doing that. So I don't care about the media roster, the media narrative. I don't care about the fan narrative. I care about the team being fixed. The problem is what you need to be doing to fix the team, as Lane Kiffin pointed out on ESPN yesterday. We played that audio on my show this morning. If you are not taking advantages of the weapons that are in front of you because you don't like the weapon that's in front of you, somebody else is going to pick up that weapon and they're going to use it on you. Am I right, Rocket Sanders at the University of South Carolina?
Oh, I'm with you. I think I think that there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I talked about this yesterday as well. If you look at like SMU's roster, that's going to be one to circle to see if the Florida State, I don't want to say consequences, but SMU, Rob, if you look down their roster right now, it's transfer. So, in saying that, they very well could experience the same thing next year that Florida State's experiencing this year. I'm with you. Speaking of South Carolina, though, my South Carolina question for you, I've got 2 questions left on this sports blitz. Can South Carolina, Rob Brown, recapture the season that they've had this season and not have the let down games down the stretch? Because I know a lot of conversations about what could have been, right, if you were to have beaten LSU or Alabama. But do you feel like this South Carolina team, legitimately looking at the rest of the games, can win out?
You a Ted Lasso guy, Cole Bryson?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it.
Okay. Big Ted Lasso guy over here, right? I got a Believe shirt up there. I got a Believe sign on the wall in the Bro Cave up here. Big Ted Lasso guy. Okay. Early in season 1 of Ted Lasso, he looks at a player named Sambo Basani who had a bad day, and he says, hey, you know what the happiest animal on planet Earth is? It's a goldfish. Why? Because it's got a 10-second memory. Man, There is not a more important lesson that you can take away from sports, whether you're an athlete or a coach or a fan, than be a goldfish. Have that 10-second memory. You can't go back in the past, 88 miles an hour in the DeLorean, and fix what happened when you got robbed against LSU. You can't go back in the past and fix what happened when you shot yourself in the foot against the University of Alabama. And you certainly can't go back and fix the fact that Ole Miss dragged your ass up and down your own field for 60 minutes in Columbia. But here's what you can do. What you can do is look at the opportunity that you have against the most overrated team in the Southeastern Conference, the Missouri Tigers, on the road at their house. You can go out there and you can drag their ass like Ole Miss dragged you, because now, Cole Bryson, the South Carolina Gamecocks have something working for them they haven't had in Shane Beamer's tenure yet. Consistency. They have strung multiple games together where Dowell Loggins has had the playbook working, where Lenore Sellers has looked confident in his game, where Rocket Sanders has seen the hole and hit the hole, where the offensive line has opened the hole. And now, turns out you had a little secret weapon, a little Jordan secret stuff in those 2 defensive ends that are causing chaos for quarterbacks around the SEC. Take that consistently. Go drag Mizzou. Now you got another top 25 win. Go do what you're supposed to do to Wofford and tune up. Then go to Clemson, beat them at their house, and get yourself a top 17, 16, 15 win. South Carolina, Cole Bryson, could have 6 top 25 wins on the resume if they went out. There's not another school that can say we will have 6 top 25 wins. You show consistency through the end of the ride, and everybody is going to be looking at Shane Beamer's trajectory going sky high coming into the 2025 season. And now, Cole, now we're looking at Alabama and revenge. Now we're looking at LSU and revenge. Now we're looking at Ole Miss and revenge, because now the transfers and now the free agents and now the prospects are going to go, oh, and Willie B's a nightclub? You're damn right. That's where I want to play football.
Rob, before I let you run, because we have Kelley Ford coming up next, texter from the 502 says, shout out to Rob this evening. Let him know I just put a $1 bill on the wall at Boathouse Oyster Bar listening to y'all. Got stationed down here. I'll have a few for both of you. Where is the Boathouse Oyster Bar?
The Boathouse Oyster Bar is on the Destin Harbor in beautiful Destin, Florida. That's my old stomping grounds, Cole Bryson. That's where a young, formidable Rob Brown cut his teeth on cheap whiskey and ladies back in the day in Destin, Florida. That is my dive bar. As a matter of fact, texter, if you're still listening, right outside the entrance to the outside dock, there's a big light pole, goes about 12 feet high. And if you look at that light pole and you look up at the very top of the light pole, you will see at the top my signature, and it says Bleep Rob Brown, because that is the last bar, Cole Bryson, that I enjoyed a cold, frosty beverage at before I moved up here to Greenville, South Carolina 5 years ago. Shout out to the Boathouse down in D-Town, FLA, baby.
I'm a Beauchamps guy. Are you okay with that?
Big Beauchamps guy. Now Beauchamps more for the food. Big group of Pontchartrain guy there at the Beauchamps. Love the Beauchamps, but once you put down a good, hearty, wholesome seafood dinner, best seafood in America, baby, Destin, Florida. It was swimming 20 minutes ago. Once you hit the Beauchamps and you knock down some group of Pontchartrain, you don't even have to move the car, Cole Bryson. You go down to the harbor, you hang a left, you walk down about 150 yards, and you are in God's favorite dive bar, the Boathouse in Destin, Florida.
I like it a lot, Rob. Appreciate you, and please don't charge me as much next time to have you on.
I'll do my best, buddy. I expect a check in the mail, and if it's not there, then I'll we work in radio. They know we don't make money, pal. They know better.
You're right. Rob Brown of the Rob Brown Show. You can catch him 6 to 10 weekdays right here on the Fan Upstate. If you haven't done so already, check him out. We're going to talk analytics in the very next segment with Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. He usually joins us at 4:20. He joined us at 5:20, or is joining us at 5:20 today. We'll talk to Kelley Ford next.
Text 71307. Keyword fan.
And connect with Diesel and Cole Bryson.
Appreciate Rob Brown of the Rob Brown Show hopping in for a few minutes to chat it up with us, do a little sports blitz, but it's time to really get you educated on the analytics, the numbers of what Kelley Ford has to say. We bring in Kelley Ford of kfordratings.com. He joins us on Wednesdays during football season. Kelley, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Cole. Thanks for having me. Apologies, I don't have my normal audio or visual setup today. I'm on the road for work, but still excited to join and able to do it via video.
Well, we'll give you a pass, okay? We'll give you a pass. No big deal, but don't let it happen again, right? Now, all kidding aside, always appreciate you hopping on, Kelley. Look, I have seen a lot of Kelley Ford on Twitter these past few days. For those that don't follow you, number one, they need to. K Ford Ratings online, but on Twitter, absolutely phenomenal follow. It's also at K Ford Ratings. Tell me, Kelley, as well as the Tolos, what's been going on the last few days, maybe even over the weekend as well, with your 30 teams. I saw you did one like every single day almost, posting your entire team. Was that the most deserving rankings? Was that right?
Yeah, so what I do every single Monday during the season, Cole, is I update my conference projections and team projection dashboards.
Gotcha.
And so, up until this week, every week prior to this week, I would post, almost every 15 minutes, teams 1 through 30 in my updated power ratings for that week. What I decided to do this week, instead of the updated K Ford power ratings, was let me just do last week's committee's top 25. Now, we know the top 25 was going to change, and it did change yesterday. But on Monday, I just said, hey, here's the dashboard for every single team the committee had ranked 1 through 25 a week ago. And that's what I decided to do because I thought people would want to see, number 25 at the time, Army, more than they wanted to see, a 4 and 5 USC that I do have power rated in my top 30.
Yeah, for sure. And for those out there that may be visiting your website today for the first time, Kelley, at kfordratings.com, when you click on the power ratings top 30, obviously your formula, your ratings are different than what was released last night. If someone went today for the very first time and saw these week 12 K Ford ratings, they would see Alabama at the very top at number 1. Can you explain why?
Yeah, for sure. And so on that tab, again, that gets updated every Sunday. That tab is, what is the K Ford power rating model projecting? If two teams were to play tomorrow on a neutral field, what would my model make the projected spread? And so basically, that's what Bill Connolly's SP Plus is trying to do. Brian Fremeau's FEI, ESPN, of course, has the FPI. There are many power rating models out there. That's what mine is. I call it the K Ford ratings. Not very creative. I'm better with numbers than creativity. But that's what that is. And so what I'm saying is that, and let's use South Carolina as another team, because I know that's of interest to a lot of the listeners. Alabama's at 28.1 power rated. South Carolina at 16.8. That is suggesting that my numbers would make Alabama about an 11 or 11.5 point favorite over South Carolina if they were to play on a neutral field. South Carolina is number 12 in my power ratings. Clemson is number 13. I would have it as about South Carolina minus half a point. Essentially a pick 'em. If those two teams were to play on a neutral field, of course they do play in just a couple weeks, but that's what the power rating tab is all about. If you're on the site for the first time, I would encourage you, especially this time of year, go to the projections tab. That's what I update every Monday, what we talked about, what I posted, the top 25 of the committee. But my favorite tab is actually, a lot of people like the CFP tab. It's the most deserving tab. So every single Tuesday, I update this, and what it's doing is looking at how much has every team achieved this year relative to what would be expected of a common teams if we viewed everybody's schedule through a common lens. And so that, to me, especially this time of year, is what's most important. It's what we really should be talking about, I believe. And so that's what I've done there on the most deserving tab that gets updated every single Tuesday. You'll notice I have BYU ranked number 1. Of course, the committee has Oregon in that spot. The biggest discrepancy that I had this week, Cole, South Carolina certainly up there, is Georgia. I believe Georgia and the resume that they have, the record they have, given the schedule they played, deserves to be ranked number 3. The committee has them number 12. I think that's a huge injustice to Georgia. But South Carolina also underranked by about 5 spots per my most deserving in the committee's rankings.
We're talking to Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. Check his website out, kfordratings.com. If you like numbers, if you like analytics, if you like college football, this site's for you. It is it's absolutely awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned Georgia. You have them underranked by 2 points. Kelley, Georgia has the toughest schedule in the country. I talked about this to open the show today. You mentioned where they're ranked outside the top 10. Why in your mind, why in the formula's mind is Georgia so far underranked?
Yeah, and I have them underranked by 9 spots. I think they should be.
Wow.
I think they should be number 3 in the country based on their resume. And yes, a 2-loss team that I have them ahead of the 1-loss Ohio State, Penn State, the undefeated Indiana, the 1-loss Miami, Tennessee, Texas. I have them ahead of Ole Miss, a team that they just lost to, and certainly the Alabama team too. So why do I think they should be there? If you go to the projections tab and you go to the Georgia team page, and you can just see the teams that Georgia has played this year from a power rating standpoint. And that's how I think we need to be giving credit for resume building. It's not about the number of ranked wins you have or your record against the committee's top 25 or your wins against 500 or better teams. Those are horrible ways to judge a team's resume. And in the year 2024, quite honestly, it's unacceptable that is how a lot of these points are being made by the decision makers on the selection committee. It's borderline embarrassing that's how our current process to decide the playoff field is dictated. If we look at Georgia's opponents' power ratings, Georgia has had to go on the road to play 3 of the top 4 power-rated teams in the entire country. And if you want to quibble about, a couple spots here or there, fine. The reality is Georgia has faced 3 of the top, at worst, 6 or 7 teams in the country, all away from home, not to mention they're getting ready to play another top 10 power-rated team at home. That's not built into the most deserving just yet. It will be after this weekend. They faced Clemson, who I have in the top 15 power rating away from home at a neutral site. You've got Kentucky on the road, who's in the top 40. Auburn at home is a top 40 power rated team. Florida at a neutral site. Georgia's schedule is so ridiculously difficult. And the fact that the committee is, in my estimation, just counting losses and saying, nope, you have 2 losses. You're going to be behind a couple teams that beat you. To me, it's not fair. It's not how we should be doing it. And I cannot believe that someone from the Midwest who went to a Big Ten school and roots for a Big Ten team, is having to defend Georgia, the 2-time national champions in the last 3 years. Like, this is mind-blowing to me, but that is where we are today. And I believe it's a huge injustice, not just to Georgia, but to anybody out there who plays a difficult schedule like South Carolina and is being disrespected because they have a couple extra losses. They really don't, because given the schedule they played, we would expect these teams to have the records that they do, or maybe even worse, honestly.
Kelley, I'm with you. I echo everything you just said, and I want to ask you a question that one of our Tolos asked me earlier today about the way that the committee puts these rankings together. I know you and I aren't in those rooms, but the question that was asked, and I want to hear your opinion on this, when these rankings came out last night, are these the best teams or are these the most deserving teams in your mind?
Yeah, and I think the committee's taken a different approach on this in the 4-team era. We'll see how they do it in the 12-team era. The data points, it moves. The goalposts move, I would say, Cole, from the time the first rankings are released to the end of the season. And quite honestly, what I think the committee has done is, in the past, taken the, quote, best of the, quote, most deserving. So you have this group of deserving teams. And your definition of deserving is going to vary from person to person on the committee, and certainly, nationally with media hosts and college football fans like us. So that varies already. But then you have this arbitrary cutoff of who's deserving and who's not. They then, from that group of deserving, take the best teams. And so if we're looking at the committee's rankings, and I'm just pulling them up here, I usually have multiple screens. I don't being on the road. But if we're looking at the committee's rankings, Oregon's a good team, and they're also deserving. They're undefeated. Ohio State, certainly a good team, and they are deserving to a degree. They've got a great win against Penn State. But I have Ohio State number 5 in my most deserving rankings. Texas is a really good power-rated team.
Yeah.
Texas does not have a good resume. Like you tell who is Texas's best win?
Vandy?
Texas has played one really good team, and they got beat by 15. And quite honestly, it was worse than a 15-point game. Like the final score was 15, but it was worse than that. Why is Texas number 3? To me, that makes no sense. I have Texas number 10 in my deserving rankings. Yes, Texas is the number 3 power-rated team in the country, so they are a good team in that regard. Then you're looking at, Indiana. Indiana's resume is not very good either. I mean, sure. I've got them at, I want to say, where do I have Indiana now? I have them at number 7. The committee has them number 5. So it's team by team. It's week by week. The committee changes their criteria, it would seem, based on who they're discussing and in what week of the season we're at. I believe that's the wrong way to do it. I will always say that. I'll never change my mind. I'm just very stuck in on that. I don't believe that's how we should determine this, but that's the reality. BYU being at number 6 by the committee, BYU is barely a top 25 power rated team, but they have the number 1 best resume by my metric. So the committee's splitting a difference there, saying, yeah, we'll put them at number 6. I mean, it's really inconsistent. I know there's people out there that model the committee's behavior and can be pretty accurate with it. That's fine. What I'm saying is the process that the committee's using, even if people outside that room can replicate it, the process they're using is bad. It needs to be revamped.
Do you think that college football will ever recognize that and bring in analytics more to the conversation? Because the guys and the women who are talking about this now and deciding, Kelley, they're probably not using – I mean, look, they're probably sitting in their nice tuxes in the hotel rooms, eating calamari, drinking champagne. How much analytics do you feel like they're actually using? I agree with you 100%. I hope one day it progresses more toward – I'm not saying analytics should rule everything, but I hope one day it does progress that way.
I agree with you. Analytics should not be used as the end-all be-all. However, it does need to play a bigger role than it is now. And I always say this, like with my model, it's not the end-all be-all. It's a starting point for conversation. It provides us the 30,000-foot view, and then it's up to us as prognosticators, fans, analysts, whoever is looking at it, to digest it and make their own conclusions draw their own conclusions from it. So yeah, I do believe that there is a place in the future where analytics can continue to evolve and be a part of the conversation at a more detailed level. Because right now they'll say they use analytics, and analytics is such a broad term that I'm not going to fight them on that. Sure, you're looking at numbers. I don't believe they're looking at the right numbers. And please don't take that to be like, oh, Kelley just wants them to look at his numbers. No, I want the committee to look at resume-based metrics like ESPN strength of record, which is a part of their team sheet, which is great. But you can have Kelley Ford's most deserving. You can have Bill Connolly's resume SP+. We can aggregate these deservedness metrics and use them in a more effective way to at least create what I would like to call like a true seed list for what these teams are and what their resumes are. And then if you as a committee, because we're America and we have to have a committee for everything, if you as a committee want to manually adjust this team up 2 spots, that team down 3 spots, let's honor a head-to-head here to flip these 10 and 11 teams, whatever it is, fine. But we need to have like a true north, if you will. And I think analytics can provide that, because right now, we're shooting from the hip. It's the Wild West. We don't really understand what or why it's happening. And those that do or say they do, that's okay, again. But the process itself is broken, and I feel very strongly about that.
Kelley Ford, K Ford ratings. Kelley, Clemson fans out there listening, can you give them any analytical hope that some way, somehow, they can back themselves into an ACC championship appearance?
Yeah, so I mean, Clemson fans, and I'm not prepared to speak to all the tiebreakers and all of that here on this call. However, now that SMU is still undefeated, Miami's got 1 loss, Clemson has the 1 loss, all in conference play, I should say. So it really is those 3 teams for those 2 spots. And so if I look at Clemson and what they have left with Pitt, the Citadel, which isn't going to move the needle, but then South Carolina, like Clemson has 2 opportunities left, and Pitt's fallen recently here in the last couple of weeks, so that's hurt Clemson's chances to move up. But Clemson has in front of them still, especially with South Carolina, really good opportunities to impress the committee. So whether or not they get into the ACC championship game, I believe that a 10-2 Clemson team would have a resume that would merit consideration in that at-large conversation. Certainly if Clemson gets to Charlotte and wins that game, obviously they're in and they're likely going to be a top 4 seed and get a bye. Yeah. If Clemson gets to Charlotte and loses, I believe that they're probably out, because at that point with 3 losses, given the schedule they played, even though that 3rd game would be against a good opponent, I don't think that's probably going to be enough given the other contenders. But at 10-2, That's what's interesting. And I do think that they can get there. Right now, my numbers, again, on my projections tab on the website, I've got a 40% chance that Clemson wins their next 3 games and finishes at 10-2. 71% win expectancy on the road at Pitt this weekend, greater than 99% at home against the Citadel. And then that final game of the year, South Carolina, man, that's going to be such a good one. It's got a 57% win expectancy, for Clemson, and it's got a watchability score right now of 9.6 out of 10. So certainly one of the most exciting games for me in that rivalry week. And we know that week's filled with great games, but I think that South Carolina Clemson, especially if both teams continue to win, that could be a potential CFP elimination, at-large elimination game. Some people say South Carolina's already out. Maybe they are, but I certainly don't think they should be based on the resume they have to date.
Kelley, before I let you go, speaking of South Carolina, we were doing this earlier in the show, looking at South Carolina versus, and I know I'm going to put you on the spot here, and if you can't fully answer it, it's okay, but looking at South Carolina and how they would match up against the top 10 teams, because as I go through them, Kelley, you look at Alabama. They went toe-to-toe on the road with Alabama. I think they'd beat Notre Dame. They'd Miami. Their defense would give them a chance. I think they'd beat BYU, Indiana, Penn State, Tennessee. I think there's a winnable game for South Carolina. So Gamecock fans feel good about where they're headed and how they're playing. Obviously, as we've talked about a lot, the losses against LSU and Bama have really hurt their playoff chances. But do you have any data on how they would stack up against teams in the top 10?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, on the website, the power page, the power rating model, that's exactly what it's intended to do. So if you go to the website, k4ratings.com, click on the power tab, you can see, and you referenced it earlier on this segment, Cole, the week 12 K4 ratings, and it's got the top 30 in a graphic, but it also has the full 134 listed as well. What my model suggests is that on a neutral field, South Carolina would be an underdog against only 11 teams in the country. I'll quickly give you the list of teams. The list of teams that South Carolina would be an underdog on a neutral field against, per my model, going from biggest underdog to smallest underdog. Alabama, my numbers, again, would make it about 11.5 points, Alabama favorite. Then Ohio State, Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, Tennessee, Penn State, Miami, Indiana. That is the list of teams that right now, today, if they were to face off against South Carolina, my model would favor against the Gamecocks on a neutral field. Every other team in the country, my numbers right now would favor South Carolina on a neutral field against those teams. And that does include, teams the committee has highly ranked, like a BYU, like an SMU who's up in there, like a Texas A&M who's around that conversation. So yes, South Carolina is in a very good spot from a power rating standpoint. This is certainly, by my numbers, Shane Beamer's best team in Columbia, and they are improving at a rapid rate throughout the season.
Man, that's fascinating, Kelley. It really is. Great stuff as always. Appreciate you hopping on with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too, man. Kelley Ford, K4 Ratings. Check his stuff out, guys. It's absolutely phenomenal. Tolos, k4ratings.com. His website, if you're a college football fan and you like numbers, you'll get lost. Let me just say that. Always appreciate Kelley hopping on. All right, coming up next, I want to tell you, we've had this conversation, Diesel and I have multiple times. I want to tell you what I think the Panthers should do when it comes to their rebuild and compare them to another situation where a team now is thriving. That's next.
Fan Zone.
This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan.
So we were having a conversation a few weeks ago about the Carolina Panthers and what they should do when it comes to their rebuild. I don't know how you want to use that term, if you want to put it in air quotes. But I'm telling you, man, I really thought over the weekend as I was watching the Pittsburgh Steelers that I found the best formula. I found the best solution for the Carolina Panthers. And look, I'm not a NFL GM, nor have I ever been one, but I do feel like you can look at other franchises and kind of model what they've done, right? So here's what I mean. The Carolina Panthers are in a limbo right now on if they really try to move off of Bryce Young, go find their quarterback of the future, or do they build the team around what they have, and one day when they get the guy that's right, that they feel like can take them to where they need to get, or where they need to be rather, whether that be Bryce Young or someone else, you've got a solid team there. So here's what I was looking at. The Pittsburgh Steelers. They had a really good quarterback for a really long time in Ben Roethlisberger, right? Big Ben leaves Pittsburgh, and what happens? Well, Mike Tomlin, who's a really good coach, who's never had a losing season, he keeps the Steelers afloat. Do they make it all the way to the title game? No. But post Big Ben, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were competitive. They had dudes. It was always fun to watch, them in Baltimore, the rivalry games that they have. And fast forward a few years later, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have got a guy. They've got two guys, one in Justin Fields, who started the season because of the Russell Wilson injury, and now they've got a guy in Russell Wilson. When I look at the past, let's call it 6 to 8 years of what has been the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise, I think that's where the Panthers need to start aiming. I think the Panthers need to start modeling their next few years after what Pittsburgh has done. Now, Mike Tomlin's not on that sideline in Charlotte. We know that. And that's not a slight to Dave Canales, because I think Dave Canales is a good coach. Is he Mike Tomlin? No. But what Pittsburgh has shown me is, instead of putting all your chips in tanking to find the right quarterback, which is a really high-risk scenario, how about build a really good football team? How about build a good football team that has a good defense, has a good running back? Every year you add pieces and pieces. Your goal is to be competitive. Your goal is to be able to feel like you can win games on any given Sunday. The Pittsburgh Steelers did that. And now what happens is you plug in a Russell Wilson who has kind of made me eat crow the last couple of weeks. I didn't think he would look this good. But you plug in a guy in Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and guess what? The Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-2. The Steelers are 7-2 after building a really good team, being patient, trusting the process, keeping their really good head coach. And then when the right quarterback came along, guess what? You've got a chance. You're a contender. You feel like you can make a run to the Super Bowl because of the team you have and the quarterback you have in the system. So if you're the Carolina Panthers, and we have this conversation about look, they don't have to tank. They're not going to win many more games. Should they get a quarterback? Do you go after Quinn Ewers? Do you look at Shedeur Sanders? I believe the best plan going forward for Carolina is to keep Bryce Young. Keep Bryce Young. Don't pay him a lot. Let me put it in, let me back up. Don't overpay him. Don't get yourself in a situation where you're overpaying for talent at the quarterback position. Keep Bryce Young. Keep a pretty good backup, right? There are a lot of good backups out there. But keep him and build, and then build. And then just continue to lay those blocks. Keep building, keep building, keep building. Add pieces, add more pieces. And then I believe the Carolina Panthers, I don't know, 3 to 6 years from now could be in a spot where they feel like if they have the right guy at quarterback, they can be a contender again. I just don't like the risk that's involved with selling out, selling your soul, and trying to go find the franchise guy. What do you think? Let me know, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We're going to get back into the upset picks. We've had a lot come in. We still need yours. That's next.
with Diesel and Cole Bryson.
On the
It's time to get your upset picks in. If you have not done so already, you have about 48 minutes. I'll call it 50 minutes remaining in today's show because we do go off about 6:52:30. So you got about 51 minutes to get your upset pick in. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We need your name, the game, and the amount of points, which is the spread. Make sure you use the same name each and every week. Going to get back in to the upset picks. Also get back into the college football rankings. We started the show. I started the show reacting to what was yesterday's or last night's rankings. But before we do that, let's go to the phones. 844-326-3663. Dale wants to chime in on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone. Dale, what's up, man?
Good evening, Cole. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Better now that I get to talk to Dale.
Oh, stop. You're going to make me blush. Hey, as a football fan, okay, you were talking about the Carolina Panthers and how they should rebuild going forward. With Bryce being a first-round pick and he's in year 2, they have 2 more years plus the 5th-year option. So they could essentially, if the team is, the team's not really going anywhere. They've got to build some depth.
Yes.
If they can keep Bryce and see if during that time, as they build that team up, if he is the guy or not, you could build that depth. And then, if he's not the guy, you're still going to get a high pick. You don't have to pay him next to nothing because he's on your rookie deal. That's where you can really build the team up is through the draft.
No, I'm with you 100%. I think you're dead on. Again, the key is, you and I know this very well, don't overpay for quarterback because you're not ready to do that yet. I don't like doing it anyways, but keep Bryce Young. Don't overpay for him. And Dell, I just think it's so important. Like when you look at the margin of error, if you push all your chips in of trying to go get the right quarterback that's going to dig your franchise out of the grave, that is a high risk scenario. The Panthers, frankly, can't afford that high risk scenario. That's why I think the much better option, the low risk option, is to do what you just said and then build depth, add guys. But the Pittsburgh Steelers were not very good in terms of being a contender for about a 3 to 4 or 5 year stretch after Big Ben left. If the Panthers could kind of model that, that's my point. Just continue adding guys and draft well, and then one day maybe you can go get the guy that you need.
You can do that very easily through the draft, especially when it comes to like the lineman position. Offensive line, I believe, is where the Panthers struggle the most. That and they really don't have a receiver outside of Adam Thielen, and he's a glorified slot guy.
Leggett, yeah.
You can build through the draft, and you can do it cheaply. Yes, the team is not going to be good for, like you said, the next 3 to 6 years. But by that time, you will have your answer on Bryce Young.
No, I agree with you. The only thing is that worries me about that is, can Dan Morgan, who's now in charge of this Panthers organization when it comes to being a GM, can he draft well? Mark Schlereth joined us a few weeks ago, and he talked about that exact thing with the Panthers needing draft picks, needing to build this roster because the guys they have starting just aren't NFL starters right now. And, again, I think you're right. I think I'm right. But do you trust the Panthers and do you trust Dave Tepper to stay out of the way to allow this process to take place? Because these things don't happen overnight. It's the microwave society we live in. I just don't view it happening that way.
Correct. But Dave Tepper remarkably has been very quiet.
Yes.
Since these 2 hires, since the GM and the coach. So he's realizing, hey, football's not my thing. I wish our owner could figure that out.
Yeah.
And start doing it from the side. Hey, here's the check. Here's what you got to do. Go get me a winning product. You have such and such a deadline to do it. 3 years as a fan, yeah, it's tough to watch. But you know what? If you can get to that window where for 10 to 12 years, you're perennially in the playoffs, you know you're going to be a playoff team, it's worth the 3-year struggle.
Sure. Absolutely is. Dale, always appreciate the call, man. Good to hear from you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. That's the way you can get in touch with the show and chime in on the conversation. Also, the text line's open for you as well, 71307. Start your text with the word FAN. Look, I talk fast, but if you save those numbers in your phone, you don't have to worry about listening to me and hoping I slow down when I read the phone number. Like I've heard many of you say before, 844-326-3663. How's that? Is that good? Save that number in your phone, the FAN Upstate. That way you have it. Also, you can save the FAN Upstate text line, 71307. A loaded show we've had for you today. I want to remind you, if you've missed any of it, make sure you download the free Odyssey app, AUDACY. Again, that's AUDACY. You can go back and listen to anything that you missed on the app with the rewind feature. You can send voice notes to the show. So many things you need to do. Just make sure you're not neglecting the opportunity to be really engaged and rewind anytime you want to with the free Odyssey app. All right, back to the upset picks. We have had a good number of entries come in today. Not as many as I've called for, not enough to break the record. We've had a good number, though. Right now, we're at 43 based on my calculations. So if we want to break the record, we would have to have an all-time surge here in hour number 4, and we would need 28 Tolos to get their submissions in this final hour, which is a big ask. I get that. I said ask. Get your head out of the gutter. I understand that 28's a lot, but we can make up tomorrow. We can make up tomorrow and Friday. Just don't wait till the last minute. I know a lot of Tolos sometimes wait to get their upset pick in. Try to get a little more information on the games, do a little more research. That's okay. Just don't wait too late. That way you don't forget about it. All right, let's look at some recent submissions that have come in. Also, if I don't read yours, that doesn't mean I didn't get it. I just have not had a chance to get to all of them. Mark L.O. Duck says, give me San Jose State plus 13.5 over Boise State. Dan B. is taking another Tennessee-Georgia game? Another Tennessee-Georgia selection, DB? By the way, DB, give him props. He does a fantastic job organizing this contest, this challenge, rather, brought to you by Ingles Markets. And DB wants Tennessee plus 10 versus Georgia, them dogs. We've had several of those already on today's entries. Mike Main says, Cole, give me Pitt plus 10 over Clemson. Clemson is cooked, says Mike Main. A bold statement there, Mike. Hope you're wrong, but we shall see. Look, they didn't look impressive to me in the first half. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I watched the game Saturday, as I'm sure a lot of you Clemson fans did, and South Carolina fans as well. Clemson didn't look good in the first half. I was very, very uninspired by what I saw. So Mike Main getting his upset pick in. Boiling Springs Dave says, give me Northwestern plus 28.5 over Ohio State. Boiling Springs Dave, appreciate the upset pick, as well as appreciate you listening to the show and being a toe low. All right, let's see what else. On the text line, 71307, keyword fan. Also, Tolos. Let me say this real quick. I saw a few of you Tolos earlier. Give your upset pick on the stream. And no. We don't do upset picks on the stream. So if you're watching on the stream, which there's 152 of you watching right now, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, you can get your upset pick in, but just don't do it on the stream. Don't do it in the chat. Do it on the text line, because that's where we get the official submissions from. Chris Arnett says, give me Tennessee plus 10 over Georgia. Yet another Tennessee-Georgia submission. Just Jess, the wonderful wife of DB, says, taking Mizzou plus 12 versus South Carolina. Woo! I don't know. That's risky. Syracuse. Big Mick wants Syracuse plus 7.5 versus Cal. This comes from Tolo Big Mick. Appreciate the heck out of you. Let's see. Leprechaun and Lyman text in. We did not get a call from Leprechaun and Lyman. It's been a few weeks since we've been graced by the presence of the Leprechaun, but Leprechaun of Lyman chiming in on the text line and says, Give me Nebraska over USC plus 9.5 points. Leprechaun of Lyman, I don't hate that pick. I really don't. It's an interesting pick. USC, they just have not been the team this year that a lot of people thought they would be. Scotty from BMW. He chimes in on the text line 71307 and says, Missouri plus 12 to upset the Gamecocks. It's about time for the South Carolina Chickens to lose. Scotty from BMW says, JC wants Tennessee plus 11 over Georgia. Scotty Mack also in the same boat as JC, wanting Tennessee plus 10.5 over Georgia. Reed Atkins says, I'll pick Missouri plus 12 to beat South Carolina. Ben in Simpsonville says, upset picks challenge week 12, Arkansas plus 16.5 over Texas. That's bold, Ben. That's bold. I like it, though. I like it. Let's see what else. PEZ68 wants Kent State plus 30 points. Is that game tonight, by the way? I think that game is tonight. Somebody else also took that. Let me look. Kent State, is that Miami? Yes. Kent State versus Miami of Ohio. That game comes on in 50 minutes from now. Miami of Ohio is favored by 30.5 points. Kent State's 0-9. Miami of Ohio is 5-4. Also tonight, Akron versus NIU and Eastern Michigan versus Ohio. So 3 games going on tonight in college football, but that Kent State Miami. Look, I would love 30.5 points, but I just don't know if I have much confidence there. But I might as well. I've been terrible in the challenge. All right, where was I? Oh, man, I lost my spot, Tolos. I lost my spot. Oh, here we go. Tolo Steve. Tennessee plus 10.5 over Georgia. That is, if I'm not mistaken, that is the most popular pick as of right now in the Ingles Upset Picks Challenge. Tennessee over Georgia, 10.5. Jersey Joe chimes in, says, give me Pitt getting 10 from Clem Zucks. Tell us how you really feel, Jersey Joe. John Corley, Wake Forest plus 11.5 over North Carolina. Ty and Taylor's wants Missouri plus 12 versus South Carolina. Lyman Rob says give them Mizzou over South Carolina plus 12.5. How about that? Another one, Matt M. and Gaffney. Good to hear from you, Matt M. Kent State plus 30. Another one. Kent State plus 30.5 over Miami of Ohio. Very bold, very, very bold there, Matt M. and Gaffney. Michael in Simpsonville wants Pitt, Clemson, Pitt plus 10. Greenville Gamecock wants Pitt over Clemson plus 10 as well. And I believe that's most of them. I believe I have read most of, if not all of, the upset picks on air for you Tolos out there. But continue to get those in. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Texter asks, why doesn't Alabama Mercer have a line? Is there still not a line on that game? Well, Mercer is probably the reason for that. You're right. There's not a line on that game. According to ESPN.com, there's not. And you know what? Today's Wednesday. Yeah, if there's not a line on it now, probably won't be. Probably won't be. So, yeah, you can't pick that one if it doesn't have a line on it. What are they like? The Southern Conference? Yeah, they're in the SoCon, right? Mercer? I think Mercer's in the SoCon. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why Forrest, who texted that in, he does get his upset pick in. Forrest does. Nebraska over USC. Okay, I'm going to put that on the sheet, Forrest, so your entry is official. Appreciate you entering the challenge as well. 71307. All right, Tolos, it's time for me. It's time for me to find a game. I've got to find one. I've got to find a game, and I've got to hit this week, man. I've been ice cold. But first, Mark Elo Ducks on the YouTube stream says, Cole, I remember when you laughed about the Kennesaw State game on a Wednesday night and they won. Maybe it's Kent State's turn. Mark Elo Ducks, you may be right. Okay, if that's the case, then I'm going to take them. if that's the case, I'm going to take Kent State to pull the 30.5-point upset, right? Because if I'm going to jinx it, I want to be on the winning side, right? I just don't see that happening. I could be wrong, though. I've been wrong once or twice before, but I've got to find a game. I've got several. I everything in me wants to go big, swing for the fences, right? I just don't know if that strategy is very, very smart. So I don't think I'm going to swing for the fences. I did yesterday in our upset pick study session. I did give you a few. The one that I keep going back to is 1 o'clock Saturday on ESPN Plus, Coastal and Marshall. Marshall's favored by 9. The game's at Marshall. They're 6-3, 4-1 in the Sun Belt. Coastal's 5-4, 2-3. I just do think, though, I do think Coastal's a well-coached team that has talent that eventually is going to win a game they're not supposed to. I don't know if I'm going to officially take that one. I may have to wait until tomorrow for my upset pick. I like that one. I like it. I really do. 9 points. It doesn't get me where I need to be in the upset picks challenge, but a win's a win, and I would obviously take 9 points because I desperately need it. If you want to see where you are in the upset picks challenge, you can do so at the Fan Upstate. Twisted Whisker leads the pack right now. Noel sits at second. John Dog at third. Reed Atkins at fourth. Joe D in fifth. Amazon Guy. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. Reed Atkins and Joe D are tied for fourth. Justin L is in sixth. Amazon Guy seventh. Billy Horn 8. Jake Crane 8 as well. T-Ray 10. Roger Carper 11, tied with Notre Dame Nate. Greenville Gamecock 13. The Clemson Oculus 14. Mike Main 15. Shout out to Brendan Gosnell at 16. Scotty Mack at 17. Buckeye Bryan at 18. John Corley at 19. Josh Pate at 20, CJ from Greer 21, Reese Davis 22, Bomo 23, Nick Saban 24, and rounding out the top 25 is the one and only Diesel, who has 25.5 points. Congratulations to him. And let's see, if you want to find your boy, you've got to click on this. Unfortunately, you have to click on the second page. You have to go all the way down to 67. 67, where you would find me sitting with 12 measly freaking points. 12 points. That's where I am. But the good news is there are a lot of other Tolos that are behind me. So I can say, hey, I'm beating you guys. I'm beating you, Sparty Party, Ben, Ty, Matt, Tiger Pal, Rachel, but not much to brag about on my end. But if you were to be bold and swing and really hit on one of those big ones, boy, could you catapult. I just don't think the Kent State game tonight is the one to do it on. If you were to look, though, and say, okay, let's find another game where the spread is just monstrous, right, to where you could really make up some ground in the upset picks challenge, you could pick Northwestern over Ohio State. I obviously don't think that's going to happen. Ohio State favored by 28.5. Texas, Arkansas, that's 13.5 point spread. So obviously that'd get you a good amount of points. Wouldn't be a huge one. La Tech, Western Kentucky, 14. Auburn, UL Monroe is as a 24-point spread. UL Monroe's 5-4. Auburn's 3-6. And heck with it. Heck with it. Let's just go ahead and make my selection right now. I'm gonna pick. Let's do it. I'm gonna pick UL Monroe over Auburn. I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the trigger on it. I'm going to swing big for the fences here. I'm not going to pick Coastal. Not enough points there for me to be interested in. So I'm going to swing big, swing for the fences. My upset pick officially in Saturday at 12:45 in Jordan-Hare Stadium. UL Monroe plus 24 to defeat Auburn. That's my upset pick. UL Monroe, let's freaking go. I don't even know what your mascot is. What's UL? Somebody on the text line. UL Monroe. Diesel is the best at mascots. Are they the Raging Cajuns? Diesel's not here. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I got that mixed up with the other Louisiana school. UL Monroe is the Warhawks, right? Warhawks. I don't know if I like that or not. So I'm picking UL Monroe over Auburn. They have not been impressive. Mark L.O. Ducks on the stream does confirm they are the Warhawks. Mark Elo Ducks. Let's go Warhawks. I've never in my life pulled for UL Monroe, but by God, I'm pulling for them this weekend. Beat freaking Auburn. All right, our interview from earlier with Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. That's next.
seeing a lot of Georgia folks, Cole, to your point, that are upset and they want to cite the strength of schedule. And I totally understand it, right? Number one, strength of schedule. But here's the thing, Cole. It's not just about resume, which they've lost 2 games. I was there in person, witnessed them get thrashed by Ole Miss. I haven't seen a Georgia team dominated like that in quite some time. But it's also eye test, Cole. And to that point, listen, their schedule's really tough. I totally get it and understand it. They've looked bad all year against everyone they've played. Like, not just Bama, not just Ole Miss. How about Florida, who's not very good? How about against Mississippi State, who's not very good? How about looking sluggish against Auburn, who's not very good? I know they had that big win first game of the season against Clemson. Take nothing away from them for that. But it's got to be some eye test, too. Here's the thing, Cole, and I know I'm getting a little bit of a tangent here. If Georgia wins out, they're in. They control their destiny. That's the best thing you could say. But right now, being the first team out, it's deserved, especially after the way they lost to Ole Miss.
No, I'm with you. You know, I just think a lot of people are wrapped around the fact that they have the number one strength of schedule. You're right. They have not played well. That leads me to the next question. What the heck is wrong with Carson Beck?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cole, and watching him in person. Again, I've seen him 2 weeks in a row, and it'll be a third straight week this weekend when I go to Athens to watch the Dogs take on Tennessee. You know, I will say this. Listen, quarterbacks get too much of the credit, too much of the blame. It is more than him, right? Against Ole Miss, he didn't have a chance, especially in that second half. That Ole Miss pass rush, that defensive front, which is one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country, absolutely relentless. But he's seeing ghosts. He's just not playing well. I mean, he just looks lost out there at times. It's as simple as that, Cole. I just don't think he's playing well.
Is there another option, though?
No, I don't think you can bail on Carson Beck. I don't think Gunnar Stockton on the bench is the answer, or Jaden Rashada, God forbid. I think Carson Beck is your guy. Now, again, he's got the potential. Like I think we've seen it before. I really feel like he can play better than he has been. It's just the turnovers that are killing him. And again, I say this too, it's not just him. The offensive line hasn't been great. You know, they're lacking like big-time playmakers on the outside. They got a few guys here and there at wide receiver, but it's not what we're used to. And then even the running back position, Cole, I mean, Trevor Etienne has been banged up here lately. You know, they lost Branson Robinson and Roderick Robertson early in the season, or I think even before the season started. So, like, they're really thin at running back, too. Oscar Delp and Benjamin Urasek at the tight end position have not been what people thought they would be, trying to replace the production of Brock Bowers. So, say all that to say it's a lot more things than Carson Beck. But at the end of the day, Cole, the number one thing Carson Beck isn't doing well, he's not protecting the football. And in this league, especially when you go on the road like we saw this past weekend, you turn the football over, it's a great recipe to lose.
Let's stay on those rankings for just another minute or two, Chris. Other than Georgia, obviously that was kind of the biggest sticking point for a lot of people. The rankings that came out last night, and we know that they're not final. We still have a few weeks to play. But do you have any other issues SEC-wise, or even teams that are not in the SEC when it comes to what the committee released last night?
Yeah, and I think to your point, Cole, to go back to it really quickly, you make a great point. These are not the final rankings. That's why I don't have an issue with Georgia being the first one out, because to this point right now, that's where I think Georgia deserves to be. Now, again, they went out the rest of the way. They go 10-2. They better be in. I mean, again, number one strength of schedule, to your point. They lose to Tennessee, finish 9-3. Cole, I don't think a 9-3 team's getting in. I'm not sure a 9-3 team deserves to get in. And that's not a shot at a potentially 9-3 Georgia, a 9-3 South Carolina, a 9-3 LSU. I just think there's going to be so many other 10-2 teams out there that I think have earned their way that I just don't think a 9-3. I don't think there's going to be room for a 9-3 team to squeeze in there. In regards to the rest of the rankings, though, I did think it was interesting, Cole. We hear so much about SEC bias and all this. 4 of the top 5 are from the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I mean, like SEC bias to me. You know, Texas being the number 2 seed overall, 3rd in the rankings, you know, just projecting down the way. I think, Cole, I feel more and more like, believe it or not, that the A&M Texas game end of season is going to be a college football playoff eliminator, essentially, because you talk about strength of schedule. Texas is on the complete inverse of Georgia. I mean, their best win is either against Vanderbilt or Colorado State. And respect to Vandy. Vandy's a much better team this year, but Still, they just don't have that win to hang their hat on. Outside of that, Ole Miss jumped into the top 12 as I expected they would. Don't have much issue with anything else or much else, outside of that. I would say, A&M moving down a spot. They had the bye week, but they controlled their destiny. And, of course, Cole, I think we got to highlight South Carolina.
Yeah.
Jumps into the top 25 at 21, and they're one spot ahead of LSU, which I think is interesting. It's something to talk about because, we're kind of learning, Cole, as we go week by week, what is the committee value? And I think that kind of shows, hey, LSU won the head-to-head, but I think the committee also takes into account that game was 2 months ago. How are the teams playing now? They all agree South Carolina is playing better football than LSU, which I don't think is up for much debate. And so they gave South Carolina the nod in regards to that one spot ahead. So I think it's really interesting kind of watching these shows, Cole, listening to the panels, also what they're saying. I feel like they've dropped nuggets each week. For example, I mentioned Texas. Cole, I don't know if you noticed, it's 2 weeks in a row that somebody on the panel has taken a shot at Texas, right? Last night they said, Reese Davis himself said, who is Vandy play, or what's Texas's best win? Vandy? Like as a shot. That was the second week in a row they've kind of turned their nose up at Texas's schedule, which I get, but it just kind of tells me that it's like, and then they mentioned Georgia's schedule too. So the thought process is out there that if Texas, I think, loses another game, they might be out. I won't doubt that they're out because they won't have that signature win. So, but outside of that, I mean, everything was kind of as expected. But South Carolina being in that 21 spot, Clemson right ahead of them at 20. The fun part is a lot of this stuff's going to take care of itself in the last few weeks.
We're talking to Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Chris, you kind of teased it right there when it comes to maybe Texas, maybe somebody else. I talked about it yesterday. In your mind, tell me if you agree or disagree. And if you do agree, which team do you think it'll be? There's got to be a 2-loss team in the SEC because right now there's 5 that's going to be on the outside looking in, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we have 5 or 6 SEC teams finish 10-2, I mean, there's going to be at least one of them left out. I don't, unless Notre Dame, Cole, I think that's the big one. If Notre Dame loses down the stretch, they get beat by an Army or get upset by someone else, I think that knocks Notre Dame out, and I think that paves the way for a 5th SEC team to be in. But, I mean, listen, I think when you talk about all these 10-2 teams, I think Tennessee is probably the one you worry about the most because I think, I think here's the thing. I think if Texas can beat A&M, they're in, right? Georgia beats Tennessee, they're going to be in. If Ole Miss wins out, they beat Georgia, I think they're in. If Alabama, if they win out, right, they beat Georgia, they beat Georgia. That's the big one to hang their hat on. They beat LSU, they're in. What do you do with Tennessee? I know Tennessee beat Alabama. I was at that game. I'm very well aware they beat them. I don't know, Cole. It kind of feels like, and I know Tennessee fans hate to hear that. And listen, they control their destiny. They can go out there and beat Georgia on Saturday night, and this is a totally moot point. But that type of conversation I just had with you, Cole, and the way I painted that picture. Again, you could paint it the other way against Alabama, I suppose. But it kind of feels like Tennessee could be that team on the outside looking in. Hey, if A&M beats Texas is probably going to be, I mean, maybe they will be, but, Cole, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud real quick. Brands matter.
Yeah.
They're not going to leave, Cole, they're not going to leave Texas out. They're just not. I mean, unless Texas loses to Arkansas this weekend and then loses to A&M, I don't know that a 10-2 Texas won't get in. I really don't, because I think the SEC so badly is going to want to make sure they get in. Greg Sankey is going to be pulling whatever strings he's got to. So it's going to be fascinating down the stretch. But right now, I would say, Cole, the one I'd be most concerned with is probably Tennessee if things play out the way I painted it just a second ago.
In Chris Phillips' mind right now, with all that being said, who is the best team in the SEC?
Texas is the best team in the SEC in my mind right now. I think Texas is. I understand they got throttled by Georgia. But just from what I've seen top to bottom, I still think it's Texas. I do. The Georgia result feels more of, I'd love to see those two teams square off again. Because I'd probably pick Texas again, to be honest with you. If it's not Texas, I mean, listen, I drop my power rankings on Mondays. I had Texas 1, and I had Ole Miss 2. I mean, if Ole Miss is playing their best, they're just loaded. I mean, we've said that all year long.
National
right?
championship contender?
I think so, yeah. I really do. I think because I think some of the playoff too, Cole, like the best team's going to win, but it's just like in the sport, right? You got to be playing your best at the right time. If Ole Miss is clicking and playing their best at the right time, Cole, they've got maybe the best defensive front in the country, one of the best defenses in college football. They've got, I think, the best quarterback right now in the conference in Jackson Dart. They got unreal weapons around him. You know, we know the guys, Juice Wells included, Jordan Watkins, Caden Prescorn, and Caden Lee. The list goes on and on. And they've got the guy in Lane Kiffin that you saw what can happen when he gets in his bag. I thought he called a beautiful game against Georgia, one of the best I've ever seen him call. So, you know, if their offensive line can hold together, which is a big question for a lot of teams out there, I think Ole Miss is as talented as anybody. And also, too, if you look at that bracket, Cole, that was released last night, if you put Ole Miss in that 11 spot, and that path is a beautiful path. I would kill for that if I was a fan of the Rebels. Like that I think it sets up really well. You'd have to go through Penn State, BYU, and then you're in the semis against probably either a Texas or a Georgia, or a Texas or Bama. And I think in that matchup, who knows what could happen in the semis. So yeah, I think Ole Miss is that caliber of team. But right now, I would go Texas is the best team in the SEC. But you know, again, Cole, it's tough because not all these schedules are built equally, and it's like, what is Texas's signature win? What am I going off of? That's a great pushback on that. But right now, I'd still go Texas.
We're talking to Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. You said something there that I want to go back to, and it kind of got my mind spinning. You said that, whoever's playing their best at the right time. Do you feel like that the way that college football is set up now with the expanded playoff, it allows that saying, that mantra to actually be true? Whereas with a 4-team playoff, if you had a blemish early in the season, it didn't matter if you were playing your best football late in the season or not. You were already cast aside because of that loss you had earlier in the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to connect the dots to what you're saying. So, I mean, you feel like it's getting more.
Yeah, basically it allows more teams to get hot late regardless of blemishes early in the season. Like, let's say, for example, Ole Miss. If Ole Miss, what are they, 2-loss team right now, right? Ole Miss, 2-loss team, gets hot late in the year, then we all of a sudden, for the first time in my mind in college football, can actually say it is about who's playing their best at the right time, because I just can't remember a time in college football in the past where that mattered, because let's say you had 1 loss early in the season or 2 losses, you were out of the conversation. It didn't matter if you got hot at the end of the year or not. You weren't making the playoffs.
Yeah, I do think, to your point, Cole, it's allowing more teams the opportunity. Yeah, I think you're correct, where you don't have to have yourself fully buttoned up and figured out by week 1.
Right.
You know, you've got some breathing room, you've got some leeway. 1 loss is not going to wreck your season. And by the way, Cole, shout out to, and probably RIP, all those people that said that the 12-team college football playoff was going to ruin the regular season and going to make it matter less. It matters more now, Cole. There's more games we care about because there's more implications across the sport. So, like, again, I was never one of those people. I want to make it very clear, Cole. I always felt like expanding the playoff was going to be great for the sport, and I think we've seen that this year that it is, especially with the parity.
Sure.
But certainly, to your point, yeah, I think it's Cole. I think when you have that mulligan or so, it gives you the opportunity to, because like you said, Ole Miss would be out of it. Like they wouldn't be able to get hot because you get to the midway point of the season, like, well, our season's over.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe they could get hot, but it'd be for nothing. So, yeah, I think it is giving more teams an opportunity to kind of find themselves. You don't have to have everything all buttoned up because I think there's some teams. Look at South Carolina. I think they're one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in college football. And I think that, I think they're the best 6-3 team in the country, whatever that might mean to you. But they didn't have it all figured out week 1. I mean, who could forget the Old Dominion game, right? Like, they didn't have it all, but they've gotten better as the season has progressed. And I think it's giving more teams the opportunity to do that and make runs. And, again, listen, football is not like baseball, Cole. Like, at the end of the day, the team with the best players is probably they're still going to win. That's just how football works. Chalk typically plays out where chalk wins out. But I do think, again, to your point, it's given opportunities to teams to kind of find themselves, come together, and potentially make runs into the postseason, which is going to be thrilling to watch for all of us.
It's a bye week for the Carolina Panthers. They're on a 2-game.
Last chance for you to get your upset picks in on the text line 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Let's see here. Kevin Buggs gets his in. He wants UL Monroe over Auburn plus 24. He says, Cole, that one's going to be my pick. Kevin Buggs, let's team up, man. Let's team up. Let's get some momentum behind this thing, and let's speak it into existence. As of right now, you and I are the only ones that have picked that game. As of right now, let me knock on some wood. You and I are the only ones that have picked UL Monroe. So let's get behind it. Let's get a little momentum there, and let's see if we can pull a big one. That would be huge for me as well as you, Kevin Buggs. Pac fan Shuff says give him Utah over Colorado. That is the 46th upset picks submission that has been sent in today. I go off the air here in about 2.5 minutes. So if you don't get it in the next 2.5 minutes, it won't count. Even if you send it like at 6:55, it won't count. It will not count. I really, really do want to get all of your submissions in. But if you do it later than if you hear me talking, you're good. But the moment I go off the air, the upset picks challenge, it closes. So if you're going to do it, go ahead and get it in right now or wait until tomorrow at 3 o'clock when it reopens again. And we'll be able to roll from there. All right, college football tonight. In case you missed it, there are some games on. We have a little bit of Wednesday night action for you coming up tonight. 3 games. Kent State, Miami of Ohio. That was chosen by several in the upset picks challenge. Miami of Ohio is a 30.5-point favorite over Kent State. We also have Akron versus Northern Illinois tonight and Eastern Michigan versus Ohio. 3 games where Miami of Ohio is favored by 30. NIU is favored over Akron by 14. And Ohio's favored over Eastern Michigan by 11. So those are the 3 games if you want to watch some college football tonight. Let's see. NBA-wise, going on if you want to go ahead and roll the basketballs out. Pacers, Magic tonight. Celtics, Nets at 7:30. Bulls, Knicks also at 7:30. Cavs, 76ers. Pelicans, Thunder. Clippers, Rockets. Pistons, Bucks. Wizards, Spurs, Grizzlies, Lakers tonight. That should be a good one. I did see earlier, I believe, where John Morant is out for tonight's game. So that's a big loss for the Grizzlies. Timberwolves, Trailblazers tonight at 10, and then Suns, Kings at 10 p.m. tonight as well. I appreciate the heck out of you, Tolos, for Toloing with me today. Good to hear from you, whether it was on the text line, the phone line, or on the stream, where we're live every day on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. A big show coming your way tomorrow. We'll have our high school coaches spotlight as high school football season is dwindling down, and a lot more reaction on what's happening or what's happened and your thoughts on South Carolina Clemson as we start to look ahead toward this weekend and their respective matchups. I'll see you tomorrow, Tolos.